Chapter 1: Reimagining the Way Forward and Dreams, Decisions, and Destinies. The growing lack of financial literacy has left many groups behind, creating a disparity that impacts low-income individuals across all demographics. A prime example of this struggle is student loan debt. Ideally, taking on such debt should be a calculated risk where the reward is enhanced annual compensation that multiplies the cost of education over time. Until public policy shifts to view higher education as a universally beneficial public good, individuals must navigate these financial decisions by ensuring that every choice carries inherent value. Becoming an informed, empowered consumer is not merely a personal benefit but a transformative act for one's family quality of life. This narrative serves as more than a diagnosis of societal ailments. It is an empowerment tool and a call to action, aiming to bridge the gap between the financially illiterate and the financially free through focused education, community engagement, and workforce development. America's economic history is a testament to human ingenuity, reinvention, and a fair amount of luck, evolving from steel and oil to the modern frontiers of technology and artificial intelligence. Yet, the nation's greatest untapped resource and export remains its human capital, the unique brand of hope known as the American dream. To sustain this in a new century, the country must upgrade its systemic software. Throughout history, Americans have mobilized to correct course, unifying under a democracy rooted in hope and exceptionalism. This exceptionalism is defined by social mobility, the ability to rise from a low estate to a higher one. Preserving this requires proving that the American dream is still viable, ensuring the nation remains a beacon of light and opportunity, rather than succumbing to the moral laziness of expecting others to solve collective problems. A critical realization is that ownership is the prerequisite for solving these societal issues. Just as no one washes a rental car because they lack a stake in its long-term maintenance, society cannot rely on others to clean up its economic challenges. People must own the problems to solve them. Success invariably follows work, and the current economic reality dictates that reliance on a single demographic to drive the gross domestic product is no longer mathematically viable. With traditional minority groups comprising a significant portion of the population, and the middle class exhausted, the path forward requires equipping everyone with the owner's manual for the economy. Division is a failed business case, and sustainable growth demands harnessing the untapped energy of the entire population. Financial literacy, therefore, becomes the civil rights issue of the time, the key to leveling the playing field and replacing old exclusionary systems with a business plan accessible to all. The urgency of this mission is deeply personal, rooted in lessons learned during childhood. By the age of 5, the fragility of financial success was made starkly evident through the rise and fall of a family's mini-empire. An industrious mother and father, armed only with high school educations, had acquired significant assets in south-central Los Angeles, including a family home, a gas station, and an 8-unit apartment building purchased for a fraction of its modern value. These assets, combined with a cement masonry business and a childcare nursery, represented a profound achievement. Yet, despite this accumulation of wealth, the empire crumbled into divorce, resulting in the total loss of assets that would be worth millions today. The collapse stemmed from a fundamental misunderstanding of wealth creation. While the father possessed the hustle to make money, he lacked the knowledge to keep it, confusing cash flow with profit, and failing to understand that true wealth is built through compounding, essentially making money while one sleeps. He did not recognize the mother as a true partner, despite her possession of the saving and growing instincts he lacked. The dissolution of the household was triggered by a violation of this partnership, the misuse of the eldest brother's college fund. This betrayal of the principle that a union should multiply value rather than diminish led to the mother's departure with her children, marking the beginning of a journey defined by the harsh but clarifying lessons of financial loss and the enduring necessity of financial literacy. Chapter 2, Dreams, Decisions, and Destinies. The tale of what happened with my mother serves as a constructive lesson for the present, just as it did for me then. My parents, Juanita and Johnny Will Smith, hailed from the American South, arriving in Los Angeles with only a few dollars, a wealth of dreams, and boundless hustle. Both possessed the equivalent of a high school education, though my mother had not formally graduated, at least not yet. It speaks volumes about her character that she returned to school at age 62, finishing her equivalency and marching in a cap and gown alongside 18-year-olds. That determination defines the spirit of Miss Juanita Smith, who was called home at the age of 88 during the writing of this book. Their journey began in East St. Louis, where they met shortly after my mother had ended an abusive relationship. My father-to-be fell deeply and quickly in love, but my mother's agreement to marry him came with a specific condition. He had to move her and her 2 children, my older brother Donnie and sister Monty, to Southern California. She harbored a premonition, a hope born in a dream, that the safety and future of her children lay 2,000 miles away. This vision became reality when my father came through town on his way to buy a new car in Detroit, eventually taking the family west to Los Angeles. To his enduring credit, he loved my mother madly and vowed to care for her children as if they were his own, a promise he kept faithfully until his passing in 2014. He was a father figure through and through, providing a foundation of love and commitment for everyone under his roof. Full of new shared dreams and a desire to complete their family unit, they welcomed me into the world on February 6, 1966, at Good Samaritan Hospital in downtown Los Angeles. Though the hospital has since closed, the aspirations birthed there remain alive. As I've noted, my parents built a mini-empire on little more than grit, but while they succeeded in generating income, the preservation of that wealth proved elusive. My father was skilled at making money but struggled to keep it, often confusing cash flow with true profit. Crucially, he failed to leverage the financial planning and savings expertise my mother naturally possessed. Civil rights icon and mentor Reverend Andrew J. Young often says that men and women fail for 3 main reasons: arrogance, pride, and greed. My father was neither arrogant nor greedy, but he was full of pride, a trait that, unchecked, can be destructive. He simply would not ask my mother enough questions about money. Around the time of my birth, my industrious mother had quickly saved approximately $4,000 as a dedicated fund for my brother Donnie's college education. Her goal was specific. She wanted him to have the freedom and choices she never had. She understood, even then, that freedom is not free. It is purchased through self-determination, which in turn requires financial stability and understanding. That $4,000 represented Donnie's lifeline and his insurance for the future. Unfortunately, my father believed he had bigger, better ideas for that capital. Driven by pride and a lack of financial discipline, he used the money for his own ventures and lost every penny of it. The consequences of this single decision were profound and irrevocable. Without the funds to attend the college of his choice, my brother's options for higher education were severely restricted. To secure a degree, he was forced to turn to the United States military, which offered a 4-year education in exchange for enlistment. What began as a simple act of my father doing as he pleased with the savings resulted in my brother spending not just a few years, but his entire professional career of more than 2 decades in the Navy. This loss illustrated a painful truth. When financial literacy is missing, the freedom to choose one's own destiny often disappears with it. Chapter 3, Dreams, wonderful woman from Hawaii, where he built a life and family, and while he would not wish for things to be any other way, the reality remains that from a perspective of financial freedom, none of this was his choice. His path was pre-made for him at age 18, dictated entirely by my father's decision to gamble away that $4,000 savings fund. While Donnie has led a fulfilling life, I cannot help but wonder what might have been had he possessed the agency to attend the college of his choice or pursue a passion purely of his own making. Whether he might have become a school teacher, an engineer, a hotel manager, or a small business owner, is a question that will forever remain unanswered, as that decision was stripped away from him before he ever had the chance to make it. For my mother, the loss of the college fund was the final breaking point. Compounded by the domestic abuse and fighting that plagued their relationship, the financial betrayal solidified her resolve. She had had enough. Her priority shifted to ensuring that her two remaining children at home, my older sister Monty and me, would retain the power to make our own decisions in life, a liberty she felt she had been denied in her own upbringing. Consequently, she divorced my father and struck out on her own, taking us with her. We found temporary refuge moving in with a girlfriend of hers and that friend's partner. To help us adjust and feel comfortable in this new environment, she introduced them as family, though I remember the man simply as OC. OC quickly became a central figure in my world, a status cemented by a terrifying incident on the front porch. One day, while playing, I fell backward and began to swallow my tongue, choking and unable to breathe. It was OC who sprang into action, clearing my throat and saving me from suffocating right there on the porch. Without his intervention, my story would have ended before it had truly begun. He instantly became my hero, the man who had given me my life back, and I would wait eagerly each day for him to return from work. Yet, beneath the surface of this shared life, there were critical aspects of OC's reality that he kept hidden, specifically concerning money and the burden he felt as the self-described head of the household. Like my father, OC suffered from a fatal excess of pride. Faced with the sudden responsibility of 3 additional people in his home, he did not disclose that his finances were insufficient to support his girlfriend, himself, and now us. Rather than sitting us down at the kitchen table to discuss the rising costs and ask for a collective plan, a conversation my working mother would have welcomed and contributed to, he decided to shoulder the burden alone. He chose to solve the deficit by making extra money on the side through selling low-end drugs. This decision proved to be a catastrophic error. Not only was the venture illegal, but he had also unknowingly set up shop in a neighborhood where territory was already claimed by others who did not tolerate competition. The consequences of his silence and poor judgment culminated in a memory that remains seared into my mind. I was waiting for OC to return from work, watching him ride his bicycle down our residential street, just as he always did. As he pedaled closer, my excitement to see the man who had saved my life mounted. But it was quickly eclipsed by the sight of a truck rapidly approaching from behind him. The vehicle picked up its pace with aggressive intent as OC neared the house, its engine roaring dramatically, closing the distance with a terrifying speed that signaled an imminent and violent collision. Chapter 4. Dispute over street corner territory, public property that drug dealers had somehow claimed as their own. The image of his mangled bicycle and his lifeless body is one I will never be able to erase from my mind. It remains as vivid today as it was in that horrifying moment. They killed my hero over money, leaving a void where a protector had once stood, and teaching me a brutal lesson about the cost of the underground economy. In the wake of this tragedy, my mother's resilience once again came to the forefront. She was, and always had been, an exceptional saver, and not long after OC's death, she scraped together enough money to put a down payment on our first home. It was a modest single-family residence located at 15502 South Fraley Avenue in Compton, California. While it might appear small to me now, back then, to a child seeking stability, it was a large, luxurious corner lot estate that stood as the absolute pride of our new neighborhood. This purchase was a massive accomplishment. In a working-class community with few single mothers, Juanita Smith was a force of nature. She bought the home on her own, with her own cash down payment and her own impeccable credit, a credit score that, believe it or not, remained above 850 until her passing at age 88. She proved that getting ahead wasn't about race or gender, but about understanding the green. By mastering money, she opened a door to freedom and self-determination for her family, even when society tried to shut those doors in her face. As we settled into life in Compton, I sought out new connections and found a best friend down the street named George. George was everything I aspired to be, an A student, whereas I was a C student at best. I wanted to learn from him and emulate his academic success. Unfortunately, George did not see in himself the potential that I saw in him. While I was looking up to him, he was looking up to our crazy new next-door neighbor, a man who went by the name of Tweet. George had no interest in being my role model. He wanted to be cool like Tweet, chasing the kind of fleeting, ghetto-famous notoriety that extends only a few city blocks. George became enamored with Tweet for reasons I could never comprehend, adopting his walk, his talk, and his behavior. This misplaced admiration proved fatal. Ultimately, George was shot and killed while standing right next to Tweet. Even as a child, I realized that being cool held very little currency if the exchange rate was death or bankruptcy. That tragedy solidified a lifelong philosophy for me, one that my friend Tim Burt later described as becoming intellectually dangerous. I decided I did not want temporary fame. I wanted to be dangerous for a lifetime. Dangerous from the neck up, armed with a super smart mind rather than a weapon. By the time I was 9 years old, I had witnessed the destruction of my family's financial structure, the murder of my first community hero, O.C., and the killing of my best friend, George. Each loss was rooted in money and bad decision-making. I had had enough. Yet, amidst this chaos, I possessed a distinct advantage that many of my peers did not. I had the active love and support of both parents. My father may have been financially illiterate, but he was a man of integrity who worked from can't see in the morning to can't see at night, and his unconditional love, combined with my mother's enterprising spirit, provided a foundation that would eventually allow me to rise above the trauma. This sequence of early heartbreaks did more than just scar a young boy. It dismantled any illusions about the world, replacing them with a stark understanding of the relationship between financial literacy and survival. These experiences, losing wealth, losing protectors, and losing peers, created a crucible that forged a desperate need for a new way of thinking. It set the stage for a shift from merely surviving the environment to mastering the economic tools necessary to transcend it, marking the beginning of a quest to understand the forces that had so violently shaped my early years. My mother was also enterprising and hardworking, both at her hourly job at McDonnell Douglas Aircraft, which is now Hughes, and at the handicraft business she ran part-time while on the job. While no one had expressed much love for her when she was growing up, she told me she loved me every day of my life, and that affirmation made all the difference. This foundation of love and resilience is why, to this day, I maintain a specific philosophy at Operation Hope, the organization I founded to advance financial freedom. There is a profound difference between being broke and being poor. Being broke is merely a temporary economic condition, but being poor is a disabling frame of mind and a depressed condition of the spirit. We must vow to never, ever be poor again. Thanks to my parents, no matter my financial status, I was never poor. By my 9th birthday, I had seen and heard enough for 2 lifetimes. I wanted desperately to find a better solution for success, or even for managing one's own basic life for both myself and those around me in the community. I found myself wondering what hope looked like when paired with a sustainable business plan. But as I looked around my environment, no obvious answers presented themselves. Then, a banker visited my home economics class at Colin P. Kelly Elementary School and changed my entire life. My wife, Chaitra Bryant, often says that all human behavior is learned, both good and bad. And the more I reflect on this, the more I agree. I can track all the backward behavior in the neighborhood where I grew up back to someone from whom it was learned. The reality is that when you know better, you do better. The problem was that we never knew better. No matter how much I love my children, if I lack wisdom, I can only pass down my own ignorance. Out of love, we often pass down bad habits from generation to generation. But in 1975, when I was 9 years old, a banker from Bank of America came into my elementary school classroom to teach financial literacy, or what I like to call the language of money. Incidentally, Bank of America would go on to become one of the biggest backers of Operation Hope, and this visit was a precursor to the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977, which stipulated investment in underserved communities. This volunteer banker, who visited us once a week for about 6 weeks, did not fit any profile or public image I had of a white man in my neighborhood. He stood about 6'2" and wore a fine blue suit with a white linen dress shirt and a red tie. This was a good suit, starkly different from the drab affairs worn by the white police detectives who occasionally came through our streets. He also carried a business card that identified his workplace on the 16th floor of a building. This made no sense to me, as the only multi-level building in Compton was the courthouse, and even that had fewer than 10 floors. A card claiming the 16th floor might as well have been from another planet from the perspective of a little black kid in Compton. Furthermore, this white dude showed up right in the middle of our school day and seemed to stay as long as he pleased. My mother, my primary role model for work, held an hourly job with a strict lunch break and 2 scheduled 15-minute breaks. The only time she appeared in the middle of the day was if I was in trouble with the principal. Yet this man appeared casually, as if it were his own controlled decision. I would later learn he was on a salary and could come and go as an executive. The concept of an executive was foreign to me, but everything about him represented deep power. It was a kind of agency I had never witnessed, and I yearned to understand it. This marked the beginning of my relationship with a white man that was not adversarial, starting my training in creating relationship capital outside my comfort zone. It is worth noting that almost every contact my neighborhood friends had with white men back then was negative, usually involving a police officer assuming the worst of us. Getting slammed against a police cruiser was an all-too-common rite of passage in Compton, an experience that predisposes individuals to retreat from people who do not look like them. Fortunately, my childhood experience was wholly different. Beyond the banker, there was my white elementary school principal and several teachers who kindly purchased whatever I was selling through my various mail-order catalog businesses. Even the time I got in trouble for shoplifting turned into a positive, albeit scary experience. I had been caught stealing candy at Thrifty's drugstore in Compton, a learned habit from the crowd I was hanging with, as kids are not born to steal. 2 white men watching from a room above the store had the security guard bring me upstairs. They did not touch me or harm me. Instead, they sat me down and explained the gravity of going to jail, scaring me completely straight. They were protecting their store, no doubt, but they also took the time to protect me from myself. I never forgot that moment. Consequently, when I was older and hassled by white police officers, I was able to separate their bad behavior from their whiteness. I learned that there were good and bad people in every race. The real color that interested me, especially after my experience in that home economics classroom, was green, the color of U.S. currency. At the age of 9, that white banker began teaching me the language of money, and I was an eager student. Dreams, decisions, and destinies continued, dressed like a business success story from head to toe. I was dead serious when I asked, "Sir, what do you do for a living, and how did you get rich, legally?" Without hesitation or fanfare, he replied crisply that he was a banker and that he financed entrepreneurs. I admitted I did not know what an entrepreneur was, but I immediately decided that if financing them was legal, then I was going to be one. That earnest response defined who I am today. As my confidence grew, so did my discipline in role modeling. I wanted to dress just like that banker, so I went home and asked my mother for a suit. She made it clear that there was no extra money for new clothes, but I was welcome to wear the only suit I owned, a crushed velvet 3-piece ensemble with a ruffled shirt and a big bow tie, which she had made for me to wear to church every Sunday. So I wore that to elementary school in Compton. While I got beaten up nearly every day after school for it, none of that mattered. I knew what I wanted to be, and I needed to look the part. I had found my dharma, my passion, and soon my purpose, focusing intensely on the road ahead, which I could finally see clearly. At 10 years old, I applied these lessons by starting a successful candy house business. Through simple competition and hard work, I managed to put the local liquor store out of the candy business in just a few short weeks. The owner could have partnered with me, but he refused to listen to a kid, so I experienced my first real-life lesson in financial literacy, free enterprise, and responsible capitalism. I was hooked, but there was something even more powerful hiding in plain sight during those home economics lessons. My next question for the banker was regarding the scale of his profession. When he told me there were about 10,000 banks in America at the time, implying more than 1 million bankers, I was stunned. It meant there were 1 million people across the country whose mission was to lend money to dreamers like me, provided we could prove we qualified. There was no threat of getting shot or jacked. The only requirement was to pay the money back or work out a repayment plan. I did not know it then, but I had found my calling not just as an entrepreneur, but as an educator, destined to teach the language of money to countless thousands. This epiphany laid the groundwork for Operation Hope, the organization I founded to advance financial freedom. It is the rainbow after the storms of my personal life, much like how a heartbroken mother founded Mothers Against Drunk Driving, or how Michael Milken turned a battle with prostate cancer into a crusade for medical research. I went from growing up in a severely underserved community and being economically homeless at 18 to inspiring the President of the United States to make financial literacy federal policy in 2008. This journey even led to U.S. Secretary of the Treasury Jack Lew renaming the Treasury Annex Building to the Freedmen's Bank Building, honoring the legacy of former slaves who sought to learn about money. The lesson is clear. Anyone can do anything if they believe in themselves and have others who believe in their potential. Now it is time to be the change we want to see. But the first step is reckoning with the current reality. Imagine an oasis in a desert, shimmering in the heat, promising relief and sustenance. You race toward it, only to find it vanishing as you get closer. This is what the financial landscape looks like for a significant number of Americans today. A mirage of prosperity conceals a stark reality defined by a lack of savings, a lack of investments, and a lack of retirement preparedness. Underneath all of that lies a lack of understanding. As civil rights icon Reverend Andrew J. Young profoundly stated, living in a system of free enterprise without understanding the rules of free enterprise is the very definition of slavery. To move forward, we must first understand why this knowledge gap exists and why closing it is the only path to true freedom. Chapter 5. Credit is a tool, not a toy. The reality we must all grapple with, understanding the true implications of an interest rate or deciphering the dense legalese of a mortgage agreement, can feel like navigating a labyrinth. These tasks should be routine, but instead they often appear dauntingly complex. Nowhere is this complexity more evident or more consequential than in the realm of credit, a force that plays a crucial role in financial lives for better and for worse. There is an inherent irony to credit. On one hand, it has democratized access to resources, opening doors to opportunities that might otherwise have remained firmly shut. Credit allows a student to afford a university education, enables a budding entrepreneur to launch a dream business, and permits a young family to purchase their first home. Undoubtedly, it is a powerful tool for growth. On the other hand, easy access to credit is far too easy to abuse, serving as a bandage for financial strain or a mechanism to live beyond one's means, essentially writing checks that cannot be cashed. In a post-COVID-19 age defined by Apple Pay and frictionless transactions, credit cards have become synonymous with convenience, a necessity ingrained in everyday life. Yet, it is vital to remember that a credit card is essentially a loan with strings attached: interest rates, minimum payments, late fees, and credit score impacts. When swiping or tapping, it is all too easy to forget these strings until they tighten into a knot. The statistics surrounding this issue are sobering and underscore the necessity of financial literacy work. In 2023, total credit card debt in the United States exceeded $1.8 trillion, with the average household carrying a balance of about $6,088. To put that in perspective, considering an average interest rate of around 23%, making only a minimum monthly payment of $200 on a $6,000 balance would result in nearly 4 years of payments and over $3,000 in interest alone, assuming no new purchases are made. We have allowed credit to creep into the fabric of financial life, often letting the convenience overshadow the long-term cost. This is a symptom of a society that has transformed at breakneck speed. While technology and global markets have evolved, the approach to financial education remains stuck in a time warp. We are effectively sailing through a 21st century financial storm, using 20th century maps and compasses. This widespread lack of financial literacy is not merely an individual failing, but a societal crisis with ripple effects across communities and the collective future. Knowledge is freedom, and it is time to embed financial education into the learning systems, from classrooms to workplaces. This is the civil rights issue of this generation. However, it is crucial to clarify that the individual is often not the culprit. For many, debt is a necessity born of the gap between stagnant wages and rising living costs, or a calculated risk for education and opportunity. Without the guardrails of financial education, this financial tool can feel like a toy, seemingly easy to play with and without consequence. Missteps with credit can happen to anyone, even those who are supposed to know better. A personal experience serves as a humbling example. Not even a decade ago, despite being a so-called financial literacy expert, I found myself in a precarious position. I had taken out a home equity loan for approximately $90,000 at an interest rate of around 14%, resulting in hefty monthly payments of about $1,000. Years later, while still paying on this term loan, a successful friend suggested I take out a commercial line of credit for over $1 million under much more attractive terms. Despite his superior understanding of finance, I initially dismissed the idea, arguing that if I struggled with the $1,000 payments on the smaller loan, I could never manage a $1 million credit line. My friend lovingly set me straight, explaining that the structure and lower rate of the commercial line meant the monthly payments on the massive sum would be roughly the same as what I was paying on my remaining $75,000 balance. I did the math, was astounded to find he was correct, and used the low-interest line to pay off the high-interest debt immediately. This experience reinforced the lesson that we must always be lifetime learners. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we could listen twice as much as we talk. Financial missteps result in lost opportunities to build wealth and unnecessary stress. But this is not about assigning blame. It is about identifying the problems to pave the way for solutions. By acknowledging that even experts can stumble without the right perspective, we begin to shift toward a more financially educated cultural mindset. Rewriting the financial success story starts with gaining literacy, ensuring that credit remains a tool for empowerment rather than a weapon of self-destruction, and moving collectively from a state of vulnerability to one of informed action. Chapter 6: The Generation. This is a bold statement to make, but I offer it wholeheartedly because the evidence of our time demands it. Understanding the language of money is not merely a modern convenience. It is a historical necessity that traces a direct line through the unfinished work of this nation's greatest leaders. It was as central a piece of the puzzle to President Lincoln and Frederick Douglass's peace plan after the Civil War as it was to Martin Luther King Jr. and Reverend Andrew J. Young's Progress Plan in the 1960s. Today, it remains central to our current purpose plan, what I call America's upgraded business plan. Securing financial literacy rights for Americans, and especially for African Americans, is as vital to success and life today as the achievement of the right to vote was in the 1960s. Without this economic enfranchisement, political rights lack the foundation necessary to sustain true freedom. The United States has long been heralded as the land of opportunity, a place where any person can pull themselves up by their bootstraps and achieve the American dream. The cornerstone of this dream lies in the U.S. free enterprise system, which is rooted in the principles of economic freedom and opportunity. In theory, this system is open to all, regardless of race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic background. However, theory and practice often diverge, and in the case of Black Americans, Native American Indians, and other racial and social minorities, this divergence has been nothing short of a chasm. The promise of mobility is rendered hollow if the mechanisms of that mobility are obscured or withheld from specific segments of the population. Far too many Americans, and let us be clear, this is not just a problem for Black Americans, lack the basic building blocks to be successful in our system. While basic math and accounting are certainly part of the equation, financial literacy is not just about money. It is about the freedom to make choices, the confidence to take control of our own lives and our communities, and the opportunity to shape our own futures. It is the difference between being a passenger in an economy driven by others and being the driver of one's own destiny. When people lack these skills, they are stripped of their agency, leaving them vulnerable to a system they do not understand and cannot navigate. We must ask ourselves, who is teaching your community, whatever community you belong to, about financial literacy at scale? The answer reveals a disturbing pattern of systemic neglect and manipulation. African Americans were literally denied the opportunity of this knowledge, kept in the dark to maintain a status quo of dependency. Meanwhile, poor whites were sold and continue to be sold lies about the financial realities they face, placated with assurances that if they just keep on trucking, they will be taken care of, or distracted by narratives that foreigners and minorities are coming for their jobs. These falsehoods serve to divide struggling populations while diverting attention from the root cause of their stagnation, a fundamental lack of access to the economic software required to thrive in the modern world. The civil rights issue of our generation continued. This narrative of blame often culminates in pointing fingers at them, shouting, "They're the problem," as a distraction from the real issues. Meanwhile, today, immigrant communities and our growing Latin American communities face significant cultural and language barriers to understanding and participating fully in the system. These knowledge gaps are complicating our progress as a nation, creating a fractured version of what should be a thriving market, essentially broken capitalism. It is baffling that in a country where 70% of the economy is driven by consumer spending, there is no systemic plan to educate us consumers on how to create the wealth that runs the engine. That lack of alignment seems backward, completely at odds with the way we should be doing business as a nation. In today's world, no one is teaching us how to run our financial lives, how to create and balance a budget, or how to run a household, let alone how to build wealth. Despite the U.S. being the largest economy on the planet, fueled largely by you and me paying bills and living our lives, the foundation is shaky. According to the 2023 Reality Check Paycheck to Paycheck research series conducted by Lending Club Corporation in partnership with PYMS, 60% of all Americans are living from paycheck to paycheck. This precarious reality makes it undeniable that we need a new business plan. Financial illiteracy runs wide and deep in America, impacting individuals from all walks of life. It is a pervasive issue, stretching across geographic, socioeconomic, and racial lines. From Wall Street to Main Street, from Silicon Valley to the Rust Belt, a lack of financial literacy continues to undermine the prosperity and security of Americans. Consider the staggering cost. A recent study from the National Financial Educators Council estimated that a lack of financial knowledge cost Americans $388 billion in 2023 alone. To put that figure into context, it rivals the annual revenues of tech giants like Amazon and Apple and equals the GDP of countries like Ireland, Denmark, Singapore, and Finland. This sum isn't abstract. It is composed of the individual losses that millions of people across our nation suffer, ranging from incremental fees and charges that accumulate over time to poor investment decisions and missed opportunities for wealth creation. To appreciate the gravity of these statistics, one need only look at the decisions we all make: managing debt, saving for the future, investing in ourselves and our children, buying homes, and preparing for retirement. Each of these decisions has a financial component, and without the necessary knowledge, we can make mistakes that cost us dearly in both the present and the future. Take, for instance, the purchase of a car, a decision that often exposes the depth of this illiteracy. Suppose you are looking to take on a $10,000 car loan. A dealer might offer a loan with a high interest rate, citing a low credit score. Without a clear understanding of interest rates, loan terms, and credit scores, you might accept that offer, unaware that better options exist, or that the high rate will cost you thousands of dollars more than necessary over the life of the loan. Even worse, Imagine deciding to purchase that $10,000 car using a regular credit card with a 14% interest rate, and then deciding to pay only the minimum due each month. The result is a financial trap where you end up paying more than 100% of the original purchase price in interest over 10 years, while never actually paying down the principal of the car at all. Far too many of us walk into a car dealership and ask the wrong question: what's the payment? This is a fundamental error. Financial Literacy 101 dictates that you never just ask what the payment is when there is an interest rate attached. You must always find out the terms of the loan. Furthermore, there is an industry reality that no one tells you. A car dealership consists of 3 actual businesses, and the actual selling of cars is the least profitable of the 3. The financing and automotive maintenance departments are where the real money is made, often at the expense of the uninformed consumer. The same pattern of missed opportunity applies to retirement. Many people fail to start saving early enough, often because they lack an understanding of compound interest or do not realize the significant tax advantages of retirement accounts. By not saving and investing early in life, they lose out on potential earnings that could have compounded over time, significantly padding their retirement nest egg. The absence of this knowledge is not just a minor oversight, it is a systemic failure that drains wealth from those who need it most. The civil rights issue of our generation continued, and Section 2, How Did We Get Here? AKA Stories of Broken Capitalism. Consider, for example, an employee working for a company that offers a funded match 401k program. Without a financial education, that individual could be walking right past real money in their pocket every single day. If a program exists that matches employees dollar for dollar, a $5,000 contribution in a year effectively becomes $10,000. That is $5,000 of free money destined to compound over a lifetime, yet it is often left on the table simply because the worker does not understand the mechanism. When you multiply the cost of being financially illiterate regarding this single decision by every financial choice made over a lifetime, the aggregate loss becomes staggering. Financial illiteracy is a silent crisis that disproportionately affects specific communities. While the issue cuts across all demographic lines, low-income communities of every color bear the brunt of its consequences. In these neighborhoods, the effects are not just visible, they are painfully palpable, manifesting in predatory lending, poor credit, limited access to the American dream, and a distinct lack of hope. It is crucial here to distinguish between types of struggle. Sustenance poverty involves the lack of a roof over one's head, food on the table, and reasonable access to health care, basic human dignities that society should make accessible to everyone. Addressing sustenance poverty pays dividends and saves society money in the long term. However, all other forms of poverty are often based on mindset. As Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or believe that you can't, you are right. Arguably, it is what you do not know, but think you know, that is killing you. The free enterprise system is the bedrock of the American economy, theoretically promising freedom and opportunity. The concept is simple. Provide people with the freedom to create, trade, and prosper, and society will thrive with innovation and wealth multiplication. Yet, for those lacking basic financial literacy skills, this system can seem like an impenetrable fortress. The ability to make wise decisions, from buying a home to investing in the stock market, is crucial for effective participation. Without understanding the importance of credit scores, the impact of interest rates, or the benefits of early investing, one is effectively sidelined. It is not enough to merely have access to tools like bank accounts and credit cards. One must understand how to use them. Without a grasp of interest rates and minimum payments, a credit card quickly transforms from a tool for building credit into a pathway to crippling debt. Operating without financial fundamentals is like a shop. Down the street, a church tries to offer spiritual solace once a week to keep people from breaking down, with pastors doubling as informal psychologists for a congregation deep in financial depression. Compare this image with a 700 credit score community, irrespective of race or geography. These areas are stable, with very little drama and no check cashers in sight. The difference is often just 200 points on a credit score. In a country where that score determines where you live, work, and how much you pay for services, poor credit is crippling. The existence of entire communities of low credit scoring individuals is a reflection of systemic issues, not just individual responsibility. When the focus is entirely on surviving rather than thriving, planning for the future becomes a luxury, and milestones like homeownership and retirement security remain mere dreams. While no single organization can solve every systemic issue, tearing down financial education barriers is a step we can take right now to begin democratizing the American dream. This brings us to a critical examination of how we arrived at this point, a narrative often defined by broken capitalism. True capitalism operates on the premise that when I do well, society gets better. This is the backbone of the American economy. Broken capitalism, conversely, operates on the premise that when I do well, everyone else pays a price for it. As a nation, we are well acquainted with the most high-profile version of broken capitalism, chattel slavery. Like all forms of broken capital, slavery did not add true abundance to the economy. Instead, it created an undue financial and spiritual burden on everyone involved. The bill for such systems always comes due because the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. As we examine these fractures, we must ask how the narrative could have been different and identify the tools needed to create a society where everyone truly does well together. Chapter 7: Broken Capitalism and the Black and Brown People of America. This chapter could be a hallmark of broken capitalism, and the poor are an all-too-common combination. Of the more than 200 ethnic groups in the United States, it is necessary to bring specific attention to Latinos, Native American Indians, and of course, African Americans. When we look at the Latino culture, the challenges and opportunities tied to financial literacy are most easily singled out through the experience of our Mexican brothers and sisters. Most of Mexico's challenges, with versions of broken capitalism, stem respectfully from the unfortunate fiscal management of the new republic following its freedom from Spain in 1821, a struggle that some would argue continues to this present day. The average citizen of Mexico was never empowered with a sense of their own financial agency, yet it is not too late to change that trajectory. To understand the current landscape, one must remember history that is often forgotten. California was once part of Mexico, as were Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Utah, and significant parts of 5 other U.S. states. This historical reality gives new context to those of Mexican descent who crossed the border looking for a better life. Their current challenge revolves around the legalization of citizenship, education, and ensuring they become net positive economic contributors to the growing U.S. economy. Furthermore, a small point of pride and hope lies in the fact that the second president of Mexico, Vicente Ramon Guerrero, was of African descent. An Independence War general who successfully fought the Spanish, Guerrero outlawed slavery in Mexico after becoming president, an act that contributed to the secession of modern-day Texas and ultimately led to his being driven out of office. Then there is the well-documented heartbreak of the Native American people. Too many now find themselves struggling on Indian reservations, beset by insufficient education, a lack of financial resources, economic options, and social isolation, all compounded by a massive lack of financial literacy. Yet, in spite of these challenges and the clear examples of gamesmanship played against them in negotiated deals over the years, which often exploited a lack of financial sophistication, there are clear examples of how to grow Native Americans' financial agency. With the right set of circumstances, we see success. The myriad Indian-sponsored casinos and resorts underscore this point, proving that financial independence is possible even if one sets aside personal opinions on gambling as a sustainable economic stabilizer. The story of broken capitalism is perhaps most visceral when we talk about African Americans, a story I know firsthand. American slavery was many things that should trouble all of us, but at its core, it was the most egregious example of broken capitalism. Throughout history, Black Americans have faced unique barriers to economic growth, largely due to systemic and institutionalized racism that shaped the economic landscape of the entire nation. Jim Crow laws enforced racial segregation in the South, making it difficult to start businesses or gain meaningful employment, while systemic racism in financial institutions restricted access to loans, effectively excluding Black people from home ownership and wealth building. We largely brushed off the human and spiritual collateral damage of slavery and kept going, but there have always been some intent on aligning America's focus with her heart and soul. From the nation's founding, there were efforts to lay a pathway to true freedom for Black Americans. Financial freedom, defined as an understanding of money and the ability to put it to work within the U.S. free enterprise system. On March 3, 1865, as the Civil War drew to a close, President Abraham Lincoln signed legislation creating the Freedmen's Bank. Chartered with the sole mission of teaching formerly enslaved individuals about money, this was the face of financial literacy in 1865. The bank was strategically located across the street from the White House and the U.S. Treasury Department, close enough for Lincoln to theoretically look out his window and see one of his greatest achievements. The idea was simple and well-intentioned: provide a safe place for savings and a means to access credit. However, the reality turned into one of the most significant disappointments in the quest for Black economic empowerment. Hate lingered in the hearts of those who resisted Lincoln's vision, and a month after the bank's founding, he was assassinated. Despite this setback, the dream lived on briefly through figures like the famed abolitionist Frederick Douglass, who escaped slavery and later tried to save the bank, even lending it $10,000 of his own money, more than $165,000 in today's currency. Unfortunately, his passion was not enough to sustain the venture against a gamed system. Following Lincoln's death, bank trustees like Henry Cook chose greed over uplift, overseeing the institution with a lack of empathy that would eventually doom this critical early experiment in financial inclusion. Broken capitalism and the Black and brown people of America continued. The betrayal of the Freedmen's Bank was absolute. Under the stewardship of trustees like Henry Cook, a prominent and politically connected white man, the institution abandoned the people it was meant to serve. Cook invested the bank's deposits recklessly in risky ventures, and even lent the bank's money to himself, an act in clear and direct conflict with the bank's charter and rules. When the Freedmen's Bank inevitably failed in 1874, it shattered the dreams and life savings of more than 60,000 Black depositors. To add insult to injury, the U.S. government did not reimburse these depositors, a sharp contrast to the protections afforded during the savings and loan crisis of the 1980s or the Great Recession of 2008. The collapse was a devastating blow, both financially and psychologically, to a people who were newly emancipated and attempting to gain a foothold in a society already stacked against them. As fate would have it, 150 years later, I had the honor of working with then U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew and Treasury advisors, including Ammius Moore Gerety and Wally Adeyemo, who serves today as the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury and is the highest-ranking person of African descent to hold a role there, to rename the U.S. Treasury Annex Building to the Freedmen's Bank Building. Standing at the location of the original bank, this renaming served as a symbolic correction of history. Right next door, my friend and famed financier Michael Milken is building his Milken Center for the Advancement of the American Dream, which plans to feature the importance of financial literacy in its halls. While these modern gestures are significant, the failure of the Freedmen's Bank remains a bitter lesson for Black America. A stark introduction to the harsh realities of broken capitalism, a system that promised fairness and equality, but delivered the opposite. The failure of the bank is just one chapter in the broader saga of the First Reconstruction, a period that signaled a start to what should have been a cycle of change and uplift. It was meant to be about freedom, not just for Black Americans, but for the nation's conscience. Unfortunately, that shared freedom was short-lived. By the early 20th century, the resilience of the Black community was on full display in places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, known as Black Wall Street. Less than 60 years out of slavery, Black Americans had constructed a fully functioning economy, a microcosm of success where businesses flourished, property ownership was common, and a robust middle class was thriving. This progress, however, was met with violence. The Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 saw white mobs systematically destroy this prosperous district in an aggressive act of economic and racial warfare, signaling that black economic progress would not be tolerated. The story of Rosewood, Florida, in 1923 was tragically similar. A thriving black town was leveled due to a racially motivated attack spurred by a false accusation, destroying economic potential that would have spanned generations. In large part, the period between 1865 and 1965 became a fast march backward for marginalized groups. This is not hyperbole. It is a matter of cold, hard facts. As my friend Melody Hobson says, I like math because it doesn't have an opinion. The math reveals that sharecropping and convict leasing replaced slavery in everything but name across the South, arguably doing even more economic harm to the aspirations of a people. Simultaneously, black Americans were systematically left out of the Western expansion facilitated by the Homestead Act of 1862. This act provided more than 160 acres to individuals willing to farm the land, totaling 270 million acres. The math shows that more than 246 million of those acres, 96% of all grant patents, went to white families. About 1.6 million white families received land grants, while fewer than 5,500 African American claimants received patents. Since land is the central global asset from which wealth is derived, giving away 10% of America's land almost exclusively to white families fundamentally skewed the economic landscape of the nation. Instead of participating in this wealth-building expansion, black Americans were run off the land experiment. Following Lincoln's assassination, Special Field Order 15 offered a consolation prize known as 40 acres and a mule, promising 400,000 acres set aside for the formerly enslaved. This land was concentrated along the East Coast, covering beachfront property from South Carolina to Florida. While we value beachfront property today, in the agricultural age of the 1800s, it was virtually worthless because sand does not hold planting seeds well. Yet, black families did not complain. They wanted a shot at the American dream, and were willing to use whatever foothold they were given. They worked that land with immense determination, proving their willingness to participate in the economy even when the tools provided were undeniably broken. Broken capitalism and the black and brown people of America continued. Lincoln's team recognized the immense effort these families were pouring into the soil, and they rewarded that industriousness with a mule, an asset comparable to giving a farmer a tractor today. But here is the kicker. After Lincoln's assassination, with President Andrew Johnson taking over, Special Field Order 15 was canceled completely. All of the 400,000 acres of property, which had been improved by the sweat and labor of the formerly enslaved, were returned to the segregationist families, the very planters who had owned the land and declared war on the United States of America. Think about that for a minute. Black soldiers fought for their country against people who believed they did not deserve equal rights under the law. Their reward was the indignity of having to return the land they had worked so hard to make usable to the very segregationists who deemed them less than and whom they had defeated in war. To call this a slap in the face is not nearly a strong enough sentiment to describe such flagrant disrespect, which compounded the tragic slight of the Homestead Act. These actions were more than just disrespectful to America's servicemen and veterans who fought to preserve the integrity of the Union. They were bad business moves for America. They restricted the growth of the nation's most valuable asset, its aspirations, and the economic growth that stems from them, and stripped black Americans of the pride and hope that comes with moral agency and the ability to create change. This betrayal ushered in the Jim Crow era, which plays a particularly bleak role in America's narrative of redemption and renewal. Jim Crow laws controlled the approximately 100-year period from 1865 to 1965, representing a full century of broken capitalism. This uniquely American caste system was the mechanism by which power maintained its advantages, protecting the American dream for some by systematically denying access to it for black people and other ethnic and social minorities. In effect, Jim Crow was a gift to the American South. Although Southerners had been the bad actors in the Confederacy, the federal government still needed them and wished to avoid offending their sensibilities in the fragile post-war period. Instead of helping the South move past the antebellum mindset in the name of true unity, the government pandered to them by allowing for the psychological and spiritual degradation of the black community. Under this system, black Americans were given freedom in name only, while being denied full access, power, and participation in the American social, political, and economic systems, effectively dismantling the progress made during the first Reconstruction. Moving into the 20th century, the pattern of economic exclusion continued even as the nation celebrated its greatest victories. After World War II, the federal government authorized the GI Bill, giving returning war veterans the opportunity of a lifetime, a college education, new job skills, and a mortgage for a new home. This single act effectively created the modern industrial age middle class and triggered over 60 years of economic growth and success. Unfortunately, only a very small fraction of African Americans benefited from it. According to an analysis by the History Channel, in 1947, only 2 of the more than 3,200 VA guaranteed home loans in 13 Mississippi cities went to black borrowers. These sad statistics were not confined to the South. Historian Ira Katznelson noted that in New York and the northern New Jersey suburbs, fewer than 100 of the 67,000 mortgages insured by the GI Bill supported home purchases by non-whites. We haven't even addressed the destabilizing power of what we now call redlining. While people often attribute redlining to private banks, the reality is that the government put this system in place. In the 1930s, the Federal Housing Administration, FHA, literally drew red lines across maps over areas they deemed too risky to guarantee mortgages in. It is no surprise which communities were circled and who lived there. No banker in their right mind, whether they were racist or a saint-like Sunday school teacher, was going to write a mortgage loan for a property that the federal government had signaled exhibited a lack of safety and soundness. In many cases, the government outright refused to insure such mortgages. As a result, lending was primarily directed toward areas deemed safe and stabilized, ensuring that wealth creation through homeownership remained the exclusive province of white America. Broken capitalism and the black and brown people of America continued. To make matters worse, the practice of redlining did more than just stifle investment in black communities. It artificially inflated values in the so-called safe and stabilized areas. As borrowers, there were perceived to have prime access to capital. This created a pile-on effect where property values in white neighborhoods rose while values everywhere else were depressed, widening the wealth gap through the very geography of our cities. Against this backdrop of systemic economic exclusion arose the Civil Rights Movement, a period lasting from approximately 1955 to 1968 that I view as the Second Reconstruction. Led by Dr. Fowler, Martin Luther King Jr., alongside giants like Reverend Andrew J. Young and Reverend C.T. Vivian, this movement was also propelled by a host of unsung sheroes such as Dr. Dorothy Height and Mrs. Coretta Scott King. This era was marked by a laser focus on access to the voting booth, access to public accommodations and facilities, and access to jobs and careers. By 1968, however, Dr. King's focus turned sharply toward economic justice. Supported by my personal hero and mentor, Reverend Andrew J. Young, King announced the third element of his civil rights movement, the Poor People's Campaign. This initiative was about bringing together the poor everywhere, white, black, and brown, into a unified movement centered on economics and money. This campaign to address economic inequality represented a critical turning point in civil rights history, signaling a shift in focus that recognized the fight for civil rights was inherently tied to economic rights. It sought to give black Americans an entrance to working-class and middle-class economic aspirations, providing the opportunity to finally cash the check that had been promised but never delivered. It is worthy of noting that Dr. King's most famous speech, given in Washington, D.C. some years earlier, was delivered at a march explicitly titled the March for Jobs and Freedom. In that speech, he famously stated, America has presented its colored people a bad check, a check marked insufficient funds. He also poignantly remarked, "It's all right to tell a man to lift himself by his bootstraps, but it is a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his bootstraps." These two sentences encapsulated his views on the struggle of the economically disadvantaged, the bootless in our society. The campaign sought equality not just in the eyes of the law, but in the eyes of the economy as well. It was no longer merely a matter of securing seats in the same restaurants or the front of the bus. It was about securing an equal footing on the economic ladder, addressing disparities for all marginalized groups, and advocating for living wages and accessible quality of life. Broken Capitalism and the Black and Brown People of America continued. The Poor People's Campaign was designed to seek equality not only in the eyes of the law, but in the eyes of the economy. It was no longer merely a matter of securing seats in the same restaurants or the front of the bus. It was about securing an equal footing on the economic ladder. The movement aimed to address economic disparities for all marginalized groups by advocating for living wages, accessible quality education, and affordable housing. It was a grand vision to redefine American society, not by ignoring the color of people's skin, but by acknowledging it and ensuring it did not limit one's economic opportunities. Dr. King's dream evolved into a nation that would not only provide civil rights, but also pave the way for economic rights, ensuring a robust middle-class life was accessible to all, regardless of race. He deeply understood the limitations of having the right to sit at a lunch counter, but lacking the means to afford the meal. Unfortunately, Dr. King was assassinated before this campaign could gain full momentum, leaving a void that organizations like Operation Hope strive to fill today. It is vital to contextualize the timeline we are discussing. This shift occurred just after the middle of the 20th century, less than 75 years ago. This means that less than 2 generations ago, entire groups of people could not vote, could not legally enter certain establishments, and faced treacherous barriers to climbing the socioeconomic ladder. I make this point to underscore the ridiculousness of the argument submitted by those who claim that blacks should be fine by now. The math of the matter paints a starkly different picture. This nation was engaged in the broken capitalism of slavery for 250 years, about 2/3 of the existence of the nation itself. In contrast, it has been barely 75 years since the start of the civil rights movement, and Black Americans and other minority groups are still fighting for equal access to the American dream. The truth is that Black Americans have never been allowed to fully participate in the free enterprise system. While progress has undeniably been made, we are still dealing with the repercussions of centuries of exclusion and disenfranchisement. These historical narratives serve as critical reminders that financial literacy is not a luxury, but a necessity, and it is our collective responsibility to make it accessible for all. I often wonder what would have happened to the dream of freedom for all had the dreamer not been slain. I say all the time that financial literacy is the civil rights issue of this generation, the cornerstone of a new civil rights movement. Had Dr. King lived to advance this critically important unfinished work, would financial literacy have naturally become a central pillar of his movement? We will never know for certain, but Dr. King's chief lieutenant, Dr. Andrew J. Young, who serves today as the global spokesman for Operation Hope, often cites the words of Bill Fair. To live in a system of free enterprise, and yet not to understand the rules of free enterprise, is the very definition of slavery. I agree with him entirely. This is the essence of financial illiteracy today, and it is a problem we can solve. Each of the historical setbacks we have discussed was not only an attack on the Black community, but also a systemic dismantling of Black wealth, contributing significantly to the racial wealth gap we see today. According to the Brookings Institution, the net worth of a typical white family was nearly 10 times greater than that of a Black family in 2020. This disparity is not a matter of individual effort or personal responsibility. It is a matter of systemic failure. It represents a failure of our institutions and society to ensure that all citizens have a fair shot at the American dream. The economic disparity in modern America is the echo of a system that has repeatedly quashed Black prosperity. These events underline the importance of economic empowerment, making financial literacy one of the most vital tools in the quest to navigate and succeed within a financial system that has often been rigged. Despite the setbacks we have faced as a nation, most of us remain hopeful, as resilience is embedded in our national DNA. Taking the lessons from the first and second reconstructions, we are now investing in a third reconstruction. This third reconstruction is about educating the African American community that has never been fully embraced, the Native American Indians whose land was stolen, the poor whites left behind by the shift from a manufacturing economy, and every other group excluded from the mainstream success game, including women, who make up half our population. It is about teaching people how to win in America, how to write checks rather than just cash them, and how to become builders and wealth creators at scale. In today's age, we must remember what really matters. Hatred does not matter. The real color to be concerned with is not black, brown, or white. It isn't the red or blue of politics, nor is it pink or blue. The color that will unite us all is green, the color of U.S. currency. The third reconstruction will be the one that democratizes financial knowledge, making the American dream accessible to all. And that work begins with each one of us. Chapter 8. How Poor Whites Got Left Behind. The narrative of how poor Blacks actually got along quite well. They were friends and allies in the early 1600s, finding common ground in their shared struggles. And they were only driven apart because of the short-sighted economic interests of the then ownership class. That entire period was, in effect, broken capitalism on steroids, utilizing division to maintain power. Fast forward to the 20th century, however, and poor whites found a solid economic footing that defined the American middle class for decades. For much of the 1900s, America rode the waves of its industrial prowess. Manufacturing industries sprouted and flourished, providing the backbone of the country's economic growth. This era was characterized by a prevalence of blue-collar jobs, work in factories, shipyards, railroads, coal mines, and steel mills. In those days, a job on the factory floor or at the shipyard was more than just labor. It was a ticket to a middle-class lifestyle. The burgeoning manufacturing sector churned out positions that offered decent pay and often the security of benefits and pensions. The industrial age stabilized an entire generation, creating a world where a mere high school education and the desire to work were all one needed to access a respectable existence. The formula was simple and reliable. Finish school, get a factory job, work hard, and you had a fair shot at the American dream. This dream included homeownership, a car, perhaps a yearly vacation, and a secure retirement. A comfortable life was well within reach, until, quite suddenly, it wasn't. Unfortunately, as the economy moved past the Industrial Revolution and into the technology and information age, the country, and its leaders, failed to ensure that the population of working-class whites evolved along with it. Just as in the 1600s, this vital group was left behind, stranded by a shifting economic tide that no longer valued the old formula for success. The rise of automation, globalization, and the rapid expansion of the technology sector in the late 20th century caused the manufacturing sector to shrink, making decent-paying blue-collar jobs vanish. Simultaneously, society experienced several significant cultural shifts. A new culture of social competition, often described as keeping up with the Joneses, emerged as a result of access to spending power without the corresponding understanding of how to manage it. The dynamics of earning and spending changed rapidly, and the collective understanding of these concepts struggled to keep pace. As a nation, we lost something vital: our financial literacy. This lack of education, coupled with the increasing ease of making impulsive financial decisions, set the stage for an entire generation to be left without the tools and know-how necessary to access the American dream. Today, poor whites constitute the largest population of the poor in America, and financial literacy would have represented possibly the most significant economic development tool available to them, a mechanism to boost them into the middle class in good times and protect them from the trapdoor of poverty in bad. There was a time in American history when the term blue-collar did not signify struggle or imply low economic status. Instead, blue-collar work represented opportunity and stability. These jobs, primarily in manufacturing and other industrial sectors, were the lifeblood of the white American middle class for much of the 20th century. Born out of the Industrial Revolution and the subsequent boom in manufacturing, these roles filled the factories that sprung up across the nation, drawing people in search of steady employment. Because these jobs often did not require advanced education or formal training, they were accessible to a broad swath of the population. Working in manufacturing, mining, or construction was physically demanding, but it provided a fair wage, health benefits, and often a pension. It was a gateway to the middle class, a reliable means of earning a comfortable living. To understand the magnitude of this loss, one must picture the archetype of the era: a young white man, freshly graduated from high school, securing a job at the local factory. His wages are sufficient to support a family, buy a house in the suburbs, and purchase a car for commuting. He saves enough for yearly family vacations, sends his children to good schools, and eventually retires with a decent pension. This was the middle-class dream, a tangible reality within reach of many blue-collar workers. However, as the decades rolled on, this vision began to fray. Globalization, technological advancements, and shifts in economic policies led to a precipitous decline in manufacturing jobs. Factories that once hummed with activity were shut down or moved overseas, and the blue-collar jobs that remained were often lower-paying with fewer benefits. The promise of a middle-class life through manual labor is no longer a given. Today it has become a symbol of ambitions unrealized. The disappearance of these opportunities left a gaping hole in the fabric of American society. As blue-collar jobs dwindled, so did the pathways to the middle class for those without advanced education or specialized skills. This change marked the beginning of a deepening economic divide that inevitably led to a deepening social divide. When opportunity is taken away without something substantive to replace it, hope is also taken away, leaving resentment and discontent in its place. While most groups felt the pain of this transition away from a manufacturing-based economy, none felt it more acutely than lower-income whites. They were the ones whose reliable path to the American dream was destroyed. With the loss of job security and stagnating wages, and without the education, financial or otherwise, to pursue other earning streams, their ability to support their families was undermined. For them, the economic ladder was effectively broken. If you investigate many communities throughout Middle America, especially the industrial towns of the Rust Belt, you begin to see a narrative very similar to the one I saw growing up in Compton. A sustained lack of financial literacy, coupled with a lack of opportunity that invariably leads to a lack of hope and an increase in poverty. This despair manifests in increased crime, increased drug use, and increased domestic abuse, contributing to an overall decline in family and community life. The pathology of poverty is consistent regardless of geography or race. Conversely, introducing financial literacy and opportunity to these communities offers a new sense of hope and belonging. It provides a way out of poverty, both materially and spiritually. Fixing the broken aspects of capitalism begins here, with the realization that investing in financial literacy is the key to restoring the promise of the American dream for everyone. Chapter 9. Losing Focus on the Goal: Financial Freedom. We cannot overlook the staggering transformation in the average American citizen's relationship with money, a shift that has moved in lockstep with the transformation of America's economic landscape. To understand where we stand today, we must first clarify a fundamental misconception. The problem has never been spending itself. In fact, consumer spending is the engine that drives our nation forward. The problem has always lain in settling for the illusion of success rather than the reality of it. We are free to enjoy our money how we want. The vacations, the cars, and the meaningful gifts for loved ones are all part of the beauty of America. However, material possessions in and of themselves are not the American dream. The true American dream requires informed, educated spending conducted with a singular end goal in mind: financial freedom. The economy we know and enjoy today is largely a product of the post-World War II era, a period often referred to as the golden age of capitalism. This time was marked by unparalleled economic growth, higher wages, and increased consumer spending. While we should enjoy the fruits of our labor, we must also acknowledge that as a nation, we dropped the ball. We failed to provide the proper safeguards and education on how to responsibly herald in this new era of abundance and access to capital. It is a vicious cycle that we see repeated throughout our nation's history, echoing the tragic mismanagement that doomed the Freedmen's Bank. We created the mechanism for wealth but withheld the instruction manual. Up until the mid-20th century, the family model in America typically featured men as the primary breadwinners, with women relegated to domestic duties. As the economy shifted, however, this model became increasingly untenable. With the cost of living rising and the aspirations of the American dream expanding, maintaining a middle-class lifestyle began to require two incomes instead of one. Women did not just enter the workforce, they forged a path, broke barriers, and demanded their rightful place. They took on roles traditionally dominated by men and became a vital part of the economic fabric of the nation. Yet this transition into a man's world was far from easy. Decades later, America still grapples with a gender wage gap, with women earning less and having less access to higher-paying jobs than their male counterparts. Even as they work the same hours as men, women are still expected to shoulder the bulk of household chores and childcare, a reality often referred to as the double burden. As women have navigated these challenges, it has become clear that financial literacy is not just important. It is essential for their true freedom in this new economic reality. Alongside these societal shifts came the introduction of a formal credit system, primarily through credit cards, which fundamentally changed the way many Americans operated. Credit cards presented a way to increase buying power, giving consumers the opportunity to make a broader set of financial decisions. This was exciting, life-changing stuff that was mostly good, but because of a widespread lack of financial literacy, there has also been a significant downside. Think of it this way. If you give a teenager with no license and no training a brand new car, the likely result is disaster. Conversely, if that same teen is given proper training, practice, and made to pass a test certifying their driving knowledge, that car, which is a luxury, becomes a valuable tool and investment. Credit is exactly the same. Many Americans began using the tool of credit without fully understanding how to wield its power. Much like the car, increased buying power is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it drives economic growth, innovation, and offers consumers a dazzling array of choices to suit their unique needs. On the other hand, without proper guidance, it can erode financial health and stability. The situation we faced in the late 20th century was a perfect storm. An increase in the desire to buy things and a decrease in the ability to earn, accompanied by an increase in access to powerful financial tools and a decrease in financial literacy. Sadly, as economic pressures bore down, many were unprepared to face the reality of their economic choices. Without the necessary financial literacy to navigate this complex landscape, too many of us ended up burdened by debt, living paycheck to paycheck, with little to no savings for emergencies, let alone retirement. As we were buying into the dream, we were simultaneously selling out our futures. Chapter 10. The American Dream Deferred. The American dream has always been rooted in the fundamental belief that with hard work and determination, anyone can succeed in this country. It is the narrative that has inspired generations of Americans to strive for a better life, acting as a beacon of hope across the globe. However, the systemic barriers that have kept financial education out of the heads of so many, in fact, most, groups have made this dream elusive for millions. While the aspiration remains, the mechanism for achieving it has been obscured by a fog of financial illiteracy, leaving the vast majority to navigate a complex economic landscape without a map. In the United States, the practical application of building wealth relies on a combination of home ownership, investments, education, and business creation. These traditional avenues are not merely boxes to check. They require a nuanced understanding of financial matters and the ability to navigate through complex systems to make informed decisions. A lack of financial knowledge does more than just impede individuals from building wealth. It prevents them from protecting what they have earned. This inability to manage and grow resources directly affects the ability to invest in education, buy a home, start a business, or even retire comfortably, all of which are critical components of the American dream. Without the intellectual capital to manage financial capital, the dream becomes a mirage. Home ownership has long been touted as a hallmark of the American dream, serving as a tangible symbol of financial stability. That is because it is the primary driver of middle-class wealth. Despite what pundits on television might argue regarding the necessity of owning a home, the reality is that property ownership remains a cornerstone of economic security. Own a home. That said, it is easy to see why navigating the current real estate market feels like a bar too high and intimidating for many folks. Understanding mortgage rates or deciphering the long-term implications of an adjustable rate mortgage versus a fixed-rate mortgage involves a level of sophistication that is rarely taught in schools. These are not just good-to-know details. They are crucial pieces of information necessary to ensure that a home-buying dream does not metastasize into a financial nightmare. Similarly, investments, whether in the stock market, bonds, mutual funds, or retirement accounts, are key to building wealth and ensuring financial security in the future. However, these tools are useless or even dangerous without the knowledge to wield them. Understanding the nature of these investments, recognizing the difference between a high-risk and a low-risk opportunity, and knowing how to balance a portfolio are essential skills. When these financial levers are misunderstood or ignored due to a lack of education, the deferral of the American dream becomes a permanent state for too many, turning what should be a path to prosperity into a road of missed opportunities and financial stagnation. To diversify your investment portfolio is to speak the language of financial literacy. And if you cannot speak this language, you are playing a high-stakes game with blindfolds on. This blindness extends far beyond the stock market. Education and business creation are also littered with critical financial decisions and obligations. Whether it is choosing a college, deciding on the terms of a student loan, selecting a business structure, or understanding tax obligations, every step on these paths requires a choice that carries weight. Making the right choices along the way can spell the difference between success and failure, prosperity and poverty. The harsh reality is that without financial literacy, fully participating in the free enterprise system becomes a Herculean task. The rules of the game seem convoluted, and the playing field appears uneven. This lack of participation not only stymies individual potential, but also impedes our collective economic growth. In the face of rising costs of living, stagnant wages, and an increasing wealth gap, financial literacy is no longer just about money management. It is about economic survival. It is about the ability to make informed decisions that can change the trajectory of people's lives and the lives of their loved ones. It is about understanding the rules of the economic game and using them to your advantage. To understand the gravity of this, we must explore the most important rules and how a lack of financial literacy has led to so many falling behind on their dreams, starting with the crisis in higher education. According to the College Board, the average cost of tuition and fees at a public four-year college institution for in-state students rose by more than 210% in the last 30 years, even after adjusting for inflation. That statistic changes the calculus of higher education entirely. It means that it is more important, now more than ever, for students to prioritize their education in K-12 and make meaningful, calculated decisions about how to use their degree in college. Most meaningful investments are expensive, but the goal is always to get out more than you put in. The dream of attending college and securing a promising future has long been a cornerstone of the American dream. However, the dream shouldn't end at simply going to college. It must be anchored in the power of that education to provide a return on the massive investment it now requires. The true power of the university experience lies not in the diploma itself, but in the specific skills and knowledge acquired during the pursuit of that degree. In pop culture, college is frequently depicted as a montage of unregulated fun and self-discovery, a time for parties and coming of age. While it is undeniably a period of growth and transition, this romanticized view often obscures the cold economic reality. College is a major financial investment. Far too many young people have followed the well-meaning advice of parents, school counselors, and peers, diligently doing the hard work of applying, getting accepted, and transitioning to campus life, without ever having a real conversation about the role college is meant to play in their economic lives. A college degree should not just be a rite of passage, it should be a springboard toward a better future. With this economic reality in mind, we must pivot how we teach students to approach their education. Choosing a major cannot be based solely on passion, though passion is certainly important to a degree. It must also be grounded in the viability of the job they intend to pursue. Parents and counselors alike bear the responsibility to begin educating children on the potential return on investment, the ROI, of a degree from their chosen institution. Understanding that a degree is a financial asset with a cost and a projected return is in itself a fundamental form of financial education. Furthermore, the rising challenges surrounding student loan debt illuminate another often overlooked reality, the value of vocational schools. Just as blue collar should not be treated as a dirty word, neither should vocational. There is a compelling case for students enrolling in trade and vocational schools where lower student debt liabilities often pave a smoother, faster path to earning and financial stability. Beyond the specific mechanics of education and debt, there lies a broader behavioral issue that threatens the financial stability of the nation, the paycheck-to-paycheck conundrum. We often assume that living paycheck to paycheck is a struggle confined to those earning a lower income. But the reality is shockingly different. While 60% of Americans are living this way, it would be a mistake to assume this group consists solely of those at the lower end of the income spectrum. The truth is that this precarious lifestyle does not discriminate. It affects half of those earning more than $100,000 annually, and perhaps most alarmingly, 1/3 of those bringing in more than $250,000 per year. One might ask how this is even possible. How someone earning 6 figures or more can find themselves scraping by from one pay period to the next. The issue lies not in the amount of money being made, but in how that money is managed. Earning more often leads to a phenomenon known as lifestyle inflation, where expenses increase in lockstep with income. As the paycheck grows, so too do the perceived necessities and luxuries, creating a cycle where high income does not equate to high wealth, but merely to high spending. This behavior underscores the critical nature of financial literacy. Without the discipline to manage resources effectively, even substantial earnings cannot protect one from the fragility of a financial life built on sand. The higher the income, the bigger the house, the more expensive the car, and before you know it, all that income is allocated to expenses, leaving no financial cushion. Without the necessary financial literacy to manage your income, however high or low it may be, you can easily slip into a lifestyle that leaves little room for savings or investments. Living paycheck to paycheck is a precarious tightrope walk over a chasm of potential financial disaster. Without savings, every unexpected expense becomes a crisis. A sudden job loss, an unforeseen medical issue, or even a global pandemic can push someone off the financial tightrope, with nothing to break the fall. And yet, for millions, the cycle continues unabated. COVID-19 showed us, in no uncertain terms, that a lack of financial literacy is a societal problem, and one that has severe consequences for our collective well-being. The pandemic has and continues to disrupt lives and livelihoods around the globe, pushing many into precarious financial situations. But even before the pandemic, a significant portion of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck, with little to no savings. The economic shutdowns and widespread job losses that came with COVID-19 exposed the fragility of so many people's personal finances. For those who were already struggling, the pandemic only deepened their financial woes. Suddenly, individuals and families who had been just getting by were thrust into financial emergencies. Millions of Americans, especially those in the low-income bracket, found themselves without a safety net, unable to cover their basic living expenses. The COVID-19 pandemic laid bare and accelerated the undercurrents of financial uncertainty and stress that so many people in the United States were already experiencing. Many families and individuals who were already financially precarious before the pandemic fell off the financial precipice due to job losses and increased expenses. This global event served as a brutal stress test for the American economy and the individual household alike, proving that when disaster strikes, those without a strong financial literacy foundation are invariably the hardest hit. The absence of a contingency plan transformed a public health crisis into a personal economic catastrophe for millions, underscoring the urgent need to build financial resilience before the next storm arrives. For the financially literate, the pandemic was certainly a challenging time, but it was not necessarily a disaster. These individuals possessed the tools and knowledge to adapt their financial plans, finding new income streams, or tapping into savings to weather the storm. They understood how to navigate the various government relief packages and how to proactively negotiate with creditors to keep their heads above water. In contrast, those without this knowledge found themselves overwhelmed, paralyzed by circumstance, and unable to make the best decisions for their survival. The COVID-19 pandemic served as a stark reminder that financial literacy is a crucial survival tool in unprecedented times, as we move forward and rebuild in a post-pandemic world. Ensuring that every American has this tool at their disposal is not just an economic imperative, but a moral one. We must count up the costs of our behaviors, realizing that financial literacy influences our daily decisions and shapes the entire course of our financial lives. Without it, we are prone to making choices that may seem harmless or even beneficial in the short term, but are detrimental in the long run. An all too common misstep is uninformed spending without thinking about the future. We live in a culture of immediate gratification, where we obsess over the now and lack a full appreciation for what lies ahead. When important financial life decisions loom, we often fall into the habit of punting the responsibility until later, believing we have endless time to sort things out. The reality is that this type of thinking is a trap. We do not have as much time as we think. This realization should not be a cause for alarm, but rather a call to action. Being an informed consumer helps us understand the tools we need to build the lives we want at this very moment. Every dollar spent is essentially an investment in our own gratification, either now or later. Without a secure grasp on the numbers, it is far too easy to find ourselves spending money on things we don't need, with money we don't have on things that don't matter, just to impress people we don't even know. This myopia is particularly dangerous when considering retirement. Traditional pensions are almost a thing of the past. and Social Security is often not enough to maintain a comfortable standard of living. Moreover, the situation is only going to get worse. According to the Social Security Administration itself, in just over a decade, the system will only be able to pay out 75% of scheduled benefits. This projection strips away the illusion of a guaranteed safety net, forcing us to confront the reality that there is no one else we can rely on to ensure our financial security in our golden years. The responsibility rests entirely on us, and sadly, we are not doing a great job. A study by the National Institute on Retirement Security found that nearly 2/3 of working millennials have nothing, absolutely nothing, saved for retirement. As alarming as this statistic is, it is hardly surprising given the current state of financial literacy in our culture. When I consider what Social Security payments will look like when that generation starts to retire in about 30 years, I am not optimistic about the outcome. My point is this: every dollar spent on non-essential items is a dollar not saved, not invested, and not available for the unexpected or expected expenses that will inevitably arise later. Savings are not just idle cash. They provide the capital for businesses to invest and grow. Investments, especially those in the stock market, help companies expand, create jobs, and stimulate economic growth. When you possess the knowledge of how to save, you can start to build wealth and participate fully in the free enterprise system, playing an active role in fostering a healthier, more prosperous economy for everyone. By no means do I think we should stop enjoying life and become misers. No, the key is balance. We must ask how we can strike a balance between spending and saving, and how we can make informed decisions that align with our financial goals. To do that, we first need to have financial goals, followed by an understanding of what it will take to achieve them. This requires a basic grasp of how money works, knowing the difference between when money is working for you and when you are just working for it. Ultimately, this underscores the need for widespread, easily accessible financial education for all. Now, you may be asking about the role of personal accountability in all of this. Yes, personal accountability is important. We often say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And that phrase rings true in many aspects of life, including financial literacy. Every individual must show initiative and take charge when it comes to their own finances. However, as we demand personal responsibility, it is equally vital to acknowledge the deeply rooted systemic barriers that many communities face, barriers that actively hinder their ability to take charge of their economic destiny. We must frankly consider the psychological and mental toll that the legacy of slavery, segregation, and ongoing systemic racism has imprinted on the minds of many Black Americans. This burden, often intangible and underestimated by those outside the community, frequently manifests as a deep-seated distrust toward financial institutions and a skepticism about the attainability of the American dream. More tangibly, it results in a stark lack of generational wealth required to even begin the journey. Similarly, the many immigrant communities in America do not suffer from a lack of desire or ambition. Indeed, they arrived in the United States with the specific purpose of pursuing the freedom to control their destinies. It is only upon arrival that many realize the myth of meritocracy, discovering that they are starting several rungs down the aspirational ladder from the privileged classes. Hampered by language barriers, the color of their skin, and a lack of initial resources, they find themselves invisible, with no one to teach them how to navigate a system that was not built for them. Compounding these struggles are sections of the population who actively sabotage the financial progress of these groups. Misled by the popular misconception that financial stability is a zero-sum game with winners and losers, a worldview where they must ensure their kind wins. While personal responsibility remains crucial, one cannot win in America without it, we must understand that the starting line is not the same for everyone. Not all have been given the same set of tools, resources, or foundational knowledge to embark on this financial journey. Only when these gaps are recognized and bridged can we truly boast of a society where everyone has the genuine opportunity for financial freedom. As we forge this new era, the goal must be to ensure everyone gets to see, understand, and climb that aspirational ladder. If you are currently in a comfortable financial situation, you might be tempted to think that financial literacy is a problem for the less fortunate and not your concern. You would be incorrect. The repercussions of a financially uneducated population extend far beyond individual or community bounds. They affect us all. The evidence is clear, ranging from high-earning families living paycheck to paycheck to stress-fueled workplaces and whole generations navigating their financial lives like boats without rudders. This is not a them problem. It is an us problem. Whether earning more than $250,000 a year or scraping by, the inability to effectively manage money has profound implications. Financial stress leads to reduced productivity, absenteeism, and health issues, costing the U.S. economy billions of dollars annually. Furthermore, if fewer people have the resources to navigate the college admission system, we close off avenues of economic advancement, churning out graduates saddled with enormous debt and scant financial knowledge. Financial literacy is not just about individual success. It is about fueling economic growth and crafting a society where prosperity is a shared experience rather than the exclusive domain of the privileged few. To truly renew America, we must inspire every community to aspire for better and perspire to make it happen. Yet, aspiration without a clear metric is like sailing without a compass. We might have the wind in our sails, but we would be adrift without direction. We need the dream, comprising education, entrepreneurship, and community engagement that leads to financial freedom for all. But we also need a concrete plan. This necessitates a shift toward empowerment through education, serving as the foundation for an upgraded business plan for America. As we move forward, the focus must be on equipping young people and adults alike with the knowledge and skills to make informed decisions, ensuring that all Americans, regardless of their socioeconomic background, can fully participate in the economy. Chapter 11. Breaking the Chains, From Fast Money to Lasting Legacy. Pop culture possesses an undeniable influence on the means or the future. To many, especially in urban contexts, this bag symbolizes triumph over adversity, a tangible proof of escaping systemic constraints. Yet the route to it often emphasizes short-term gains, quick money derived from fleeting trends, the immediate gratification of luxury goods, and an overarching, live fast, die young attitude. While the allure of this lifestyle is undeniable, this perspective, when left unchecked, can be detrimental to the very people seeking liberation. Growing up in Compton, California, and witnessing the birth and growth of hip-hop, I understand intimately that the allure of fast money permeates not just lyrics or screen dialogues, but manifests in real-world decisions. Immediate gratification drives many to spend beyond their means, compelled to showcase a facade of success without the stability that should underpin it. This mindset not only perpetuates a cycle of debt and financial instability, but also fosters a culture where future planning and wealth creation are overshadowed by the allure of instant rewards. However, this is not an indictment of pop culture itself. Rather, it is a call to understand its nuances and direct its influence for positive change. The beauty of pop culture lies in its fluidity. It has the power to evolve, inspire, and lead. We must reframe the narrative. Instead of chasing the bag, imagine a world where the bag chases us. A world where passive income, investments, and generational wealth are the norms. The idea is not far-fetched. It is deeply rooted in financial literacy. While bills might be settled by the toil of today, true wealth, the kind that impacts generations, is often cultivated in the strategic decisions that bear fruit over time, sometimes even while we sleep. Financial literacy plays a pivotal role here, offering the tools and knowledge to transform one's relationship with money. Through it, individuals can understand the power of investments, the magic of compound interest, and the importance of savings. They can navigate the complex world of credits and debits with confidence, ensuring they are not merely earners, but wealth creators. Data has consistently shown the transformative power of early financial education. A study by the National Endowment for Financial Education found that young adults who had taken a financial literacy course in school were more likely to budget, save, and invest wisely than those who had not. It is clear evidence that education can pivot the trajectory from living for the day to planning for tomorrow. Let us be clear. There is nothing inherently wrong with wanting the bag or the successes it symbolizes. But if we are truly committed to breaking chains, the journey must transcend momentary pleasures. It must be about creating legacies, lasting wealth that benefits not just the individual, but families, communities, and future generations. In the end, the real power does not lie in the bag itself. It lies in the knowledge, choices, and actions that determine whether that bag is a fleeting trophy or a foundation for a legacy. This transformation begins with educating our kids, our communities, our change makers, and our workforce. By shifting the cultural focus from the speed of acquisition to the sustainability of wealth, we empower the next generation to build a future that is not only prosperous, but enduring, ensuring that the pursuit of the American dream results in freedom rather than a new form of bondage. Chapter 12. Educating our kids. Our traditional education system has mostly sidestepped the subject of financial literacy, leaving vast swaths of our youth unprepared for the challenges of the modern world. This systemic oversight makes the call to embed financial education in every school and in every community in America more than just a suggestion. It makes it a pressing necessity. As we look around, it becomes evident that financial decisions dictate much of our daily life, from credit card choices to student loans, and from mortgages to retirement plans. The stakes are incredibly high. It is not just about numbers and interest rates, but about life decisions, dreams, and aspirations. True financial literacy empowers individuals, offering them the agency to navigate an increasingly complex financial landscape that can otherwise feel overwhelming. The question remains, where do most of us learn about finances? Often, the answer is simply our families. For those fortunate enough to have financially savvy parents, this education starts at home, providing a head start in the economic race. But for many, especially in marginalized communities, such teachings are sparse, leading to generational cycles of financial disempowerment. Unfortunately, when it comes to financial literacy, we are largely the product of our environment. Studies have shown that financial behaviors and beliefs are often passed down from generation to generation. We learn about money mostly from our parents and guardians, for better or for worse. This phenomenon was highlighted in a 2022 academic review in the journal Family Perspectives titled Financial Literacy: From Parent to Child by Emmeline Jarvis Blizzard, which underscores how deeply our domestic origins shape our economic futures. This transmission of financial habit creates a domino effect. A child who grows up in a household where money is a constant source of stress, where bills pile up and debt is the norm, is likely to carry these habits and attitudes into adulthood. Without a solid foundation of financial education to incise this inheritance, that child may not understand how to break the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck, accumulating debt, or making poor financial decisions. This continuity of struggle illustrates why the intervention of formal education is so critical. It is the only force capable of disrupting the inheritance of financial trauma and replacing it with the tools for liberation. What is even more concerning is what happens to their future children, who unwittingly continue the pattern. We are effectively graduating generations of financially illiterate young people who grow up to become financially illiterate parents. This cycle of financial illiteracy is a significant contributor to the widening wealth gap and the perpetuation of economic inequality. Schools have often been touted as the solution to this issue, but so far, they remain an untapped resource. The reality is that most American students graduate high school without receiving any formal financial education. The current education system focuses on core subjects like math, science, and language arts, but financial literacy, an equally crucial life skill, is largely left out. This systemic failing leaves our youth ill-equipped to navigate the complex world of personal finance. They enter adulthood lacking the tools and knowledge to make wise financial decisions, and often fall into the same traps their parents did. Breaking this generational cycle requires a shift in our approach to financial education. Only then can we hope to equip the next generation with the financial skills they need to build wealth and secure both their own and America's financial future. Schools have always been a beacon of transformation, the great leveler of society. Financial education in schools has the power to democratize access to knowledge, ensuring that every child, regardless of their socioeconomic background, has a fighting chance in the world of money. However, this education needs to go beyond just theory. Kids need a practical financial education, one that integrates real-world financial situations into the curriculum. We need to equip them with the foundational knowledge to make informed decisions, presenting budgeting, understanding credit, saving strategies, and even the basics of investments as more than abstract concepts. We need kids to understand that these are tools for life. So, while textbooks can provide the foundation, we need experiential learning to truly drive the message home. Schools can collaborate with local banks and financial institutions to organize field trips, inviting professionals to offer hands-on workshops. Hey, it worked for me. Such initiatives can demystify the world of finance, transforming it from a realm of intimidation into one of empowerment. Imagine a high school program where students manage a mock investment portfolio and compete with other schools, or a classroom simulation where kids are allocated a salary and need to budget their monthly expenses to learn the consequences of overspending or the benefits of saving. That is what I am talking about. That is what will turn students into savvy consumers, entrepreneurs, and wealth builders. That is what will reduce their susceptibility to scams and predatory lending, keeping their credit scores in the 700-plus range, and setting them up to create the next generation of economic leaders. Economic growth provides jobs, increases wages, and leads to a higher standard of living for its citizens. But the engine for economic growth is not simply having more businesses or more products. It is the increased participation of the people within the economy. The more people are involved in economic activities, such as earning, spending, saving, and investing, the more robust the economy becomes. This is why financial education is a lifeline in our modern world. While the initial integration into our school system will require resources, training, and time, the return on investment for our children, our communities, and our nation is immeasurable. By committing to this path, we are not just teaching our children about money, we are equipping them with the tools to build brighter, more stable futures. Alongside this, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, education is another area that requires an upgraded plan. STEM fields are at the forefront of innovation and economic growth today, creating the jobs of the future that promise not just a paycheck, but the potential for career progression and economic mobility. Currently, low-income communities are significantly underrepresented in these fields, which has perpetuated a cycle of inequality. This is particularly concerning given that researchers from OpenAI and the University of Pennsylvania believe that by 2025, 80% of all jobs will require a certain level of technical proficiency, and the urgency of this problem is only intensifying. The problem isn't getting better. Access to quality STEM education remains unevenly distributed, with schools in underprivileged communities significantly lacking the resources to provide robust programming. To disrupt this cycle, we need to emphasize the importance of STEM education and ensure that it is accessible to all. This includes implementing effective programs in schools, providing educators with the resources they need to teach these subjects effectively, and fostering an environment that encourages curiosity and exploration. Additionally, we must work to dismantle the systemic barriers that prevent minority students from pursuing careers in these fields. It is crucial to understand that STEM education isn't just about producing the next generation of engineers, scientists, or tech entrepreneurs. It is about equipping individuals with the skills they need to navigate our increasingly digital world, and in turn, empowering them to take control of their financial futures. This holistic approach brings to mind a saying I resonate with deeply. It takes a village to raise a child. If you pause to ponder its essence, the message extends far beyond child rearing. It captures the symbiotic relationship that binds us all together. We aren't just isolated islands. We are interwoven threads in this fabric called society. And this mutual reliance is most palpable when we talk about shaping financial narratives. You see, too often, we place the onus of financial wellness entirely on the individual. We over-index on personal responsibility, while overlooking the important role of the community in lifting up our children. If you have ever found solace in a neighbor's advice, received assistance from a local organization, or simply drawn strength from your community's collective spirit, you understand this dynamic. Communities flourish when local businesses thrive. They create jobs, circulate money within the community, and often provide products or services tailored to the unique needs of their neighbors. More than that, local entrepreneurs become role models, showing the next generation that success is achievable and that their dreams too are valid. When children see someone who looks like them succeeding in business within their own neighborhood, the abstract concept of financial success becomes a tangible reality, reinforcing the village's role in nurturing not just the child, but the child's economic future. This philosophy of community interdependence extends deeply into economics. It is not just about wealth creation, but about wealth circulation. When a dollar is spent in a locally owned business, it multiplies in value as it gets respent within the same community. This multiplier effect can be significantly higher for local businesses compared to chains or outside enterprises, strengthening the economic fabric from within. History is brimming with instances of communities rallying together in the face of adversity. When economies went through upheavals or when systems failed the ordinary person, it was communities that became the first responders. They provided safety nets, pooled resources, shared wisdom, and most importantly, instilled hope. Now, juxtapose this traditional community strength with the complexities of our modern financial landscape. In an era of instant transactions, digital currencies, and global economies, it is easy to feel lost or overwhelmed. However, while the tools and systems evolve, the underlying principles remain rooted in the timeless values of trust, collaboration, and shared growth. It is in our communities where these values truly come alive. Think about your community's role in your own financial life. Remember the elderly couple who first taught you the value of saving, or that local business owner who gave you your first job without asking questions. These seemingly minor interactions play a monumental role in shaping our financial psyche. Real change, the kind that is lasting and profound, does not just come from the top. It bubbles up from our neighborhoods. It is time we acknowledge, celebrate, and harness this power. One transformative way to harness this collective power is through child savings accounts, CSAs. When we look at our children, we often see a canvas of possibilities, a bright, boundless future waiting to be shaped by their dreams and aspirations. Yet, as any painter will tell you, a canvas needs the right colors to come alive. In the case of our children, these colors are the resources, the opportunities, and the platforms we provide them. One essential resource is financial security, and this is where CSAs come into play. A CSA is an investment in a child's future, serving as more than just a bank account. It is a commitment to their dreams, a vote of confidence in their potential, and a tangible tool to teach them the power of savings and investments. To put this into practice, Operation Hope in Atlanta Public Schools recently launched the Hope Child Savings Account program. Every kindergartner in the school system who attends a Title I school receives $50 to help launch their financial future. The families and communities of these students then have the opportunity to contribute annually up until the student's senior year of high school. Upon graduation, students will have grown a healthy fund to use as a launch pad for further education or a major life investment, all stemming from that initial $50 seed. A child can have a savings account opened for them at birth, the earlier the better, to leverage the magic of compounding, because they are designed to provide long-term savings. All it takes is one small initial deposit, with future contributions coming from parents, friends, family, community members, and even the children themselves as they grow. You might wonder why one shouldn't just open a regular savings account. The key difference lies in the pairing of CSAs with financial education. These accounts serve as real-life platforms for children to learn about managing money, understanding interest, and making informed financial decisions. Furthermore, they have a profound psychological impact on a child's trajectory. Studies have found that children with CSAs are more likely to attend college and less likely to accumulate debt in adulthood. They are more likely to believe in their future, visualize their dreams, and realize that those dreams are within their grasp. In fact, a 2013 study published in the Children and Youth Services Review found that low-income children with just $500 or less in a savings account dedicated to college are 3 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to graduate than their peers without dedicated savings. By investing in CSAs, we are creating a safety net for our children and instilling in them the confidence to chase their aspirations. This contributes to community growth and societal progress, as the success of these programs is highly contingent on community engagement. Initiatives like the Seed for Oklahoma Kids experiment have shown that when communities come together to invest in their children's futures, they foster a culture of financial empowerment and resilience. A child armed with personal finance knowledge and a savings cushion grows up to be a financially responsible adult, less burdened by debt and more capable of weathering financial storms. This stability extends to their families, contributing to a more resilient community fabric. Moreover, the U.S. Government Accountability Office conducted a study showing that children with CSAs are also more likely to pursue higher education, leading to a better educated workforce that drives local economic growth. This creates a virtuous cycle where these individuals pass on their financial knowledge and habits to their own children. Beyond the economics, the psychological aspect is paramount. A CSA sends a powerful message that the community believes in the child, invests in them, and is rooting for them. This vote of confidence boosts self-esteem and aspirations, positively impacting academic performance and overall life outcomes. Ultimately, the child savings account is not just a policy tool or a financial instrument. It is a symbol of hope, a beacon of support, and a testament to the power of collective action. By fostering these accounts, we are building stronger, more resilient communities, one child at a time. Chapter 13. Educating our communities. To effect significant change, it is crucial that our approach to financial education be as inclusive and accessible as possible, moving beyond a one-size-fits-all model to deliver curricula that meet communities exactly where they are in terms of their unique needs, circumstances, and levels of understanding. Everyone's financial journey is different, and the challenges faced by a single parent working 2 jobs to make ends meet are vastly different from those faced by a young graduate just starting out. Likewise, the financial knowledge required by a small business owner may differ greatly from that of a retiree. To be effective, community-based financial education must take these divergent scenarios into account, tailoring the instruction to the harsh and hopeful realities of its audience. One approach to achieving this is through differentiated learning, providing distinct learning pathways based on specific needs, so that while a business owner learns about managing cash flow and securing funding, a student focuses on managing loan debt and saving for the future. Technology plays a vital role in democratizing this access, allowing us to offer personalized learning experiences at scale. Through online learning platforms, users can learn at their own pace and in a way that aligns with their specific schedules and needs. Digital tools have the power to make learning more interactive and engaging. Whether through budgeting apps, interactive quizzes, or online simulations, technology can bring dry financial concepts to life in a way that is both fun and effective. However, making financial education accessible is not just about breaking down digital barriers. It is about meeting people physically and culturally where they stand. Courses should be offered at convenient times and locations, and training must be affordable, if not entirely free, to ensure that no one is excluded from participation. Implementing these differentiated, technology-driven learning solutions requires significant resources, which is where the private sector must step in. We need more private corporations to support the communities they operate in, creating a synergy where their resources and innovation drive tangible changes. When these corporate efforts are strategically aligned with public initiatives to spread financial literacy, the magnitude of the potential transformation creates a powerful force for good. By joining forces, public-private partnerships can create comprehensive programs, outreach initiatives, and mentorship opportunities specifically tailored to those who have been historically left out of the free enterprise system. These partnerships foster a sense of shared responsibility and mutual benefit. The private sector builds brand equity and customer loyalty by giving back, while the public sector finds a cost-effective way to reduce inequality and stimulate economic growth. Practically speaking, a community-based financial literacy program born of such a partnership might see the government providing a local school or community center as a venue, while a private corporation offers funding, employee volunteers, and technological solutions. One of the most effective ways to foster development within these communities is through direct skills training. Whether these initiatives take the form of workshops on financial management or courses in entrepreneurial skills, they share the potential to drastically improve the socioeconomic landscape. According to a report from the Jameel Poverty Action Lab, skills training programs have been shown to increase income and employment rates among participants. Beyond the economic metrics, there is a direct impact on attitudes. When people see they can improve their circumstances through learning, they are more likely to invest time in self-improvement and encourage others to do the same. I have seen firsthand, through my work with Operation Hope, the profound impact that these collaborations can have. By merging resources, we have provided essential services to those who need them most, changing the trajectories of individuals, families, and entire communities. Encouraging more of these partnerships requires conversations in boardrooms and government offices that highlight success stories and demonstrate the win-win nature of the arrangement. A compelling historical example of this model in action is the Singapore model of financial education. In the early 2000s, the Singaporean government recognized financial literacy as a cornerstone for the nation's continued growth, but acknowledged that public resources alone were insufficient to handle the challenge. In response, they spearheaded the Money Sense initiative in 2003, a collaboration involving private banks, insurance companies, and educational institutions. The Money Sense initiative was designed to embed a holistic understanding of money, consumer rights, and the financial landscape into the population. It focused on key areas of implementation, starting with the curriculum. Major banks offered resources and personnel to help craft financial literacy lessons that, by 2010, were seamlessly integrated into math and civics classes in schools. Simultaneously, the initiative engaged the community through interactive roadshows in local centers, where banks set up booths offering free advice and workshops amidst games and quizzes. Furthermore, they leveraged digital outreach by partnering with tech firms to create online games and simulations targeted at younger audiences. These games, often tied to school competitions, succeeded in making the learning process fun and interactive, proving that when the public and private sectors align their diverse strengths toward a common educational goal, they can reshape the economic consciousness of a nation. Finally, the Singaporean model recognized that financial education could not be limited to the youth. It had to extend into the active workforce. Recognizing that adults also needed financial literacy to navigate an evolving economy, Money Sense collaborated with corporations to provide lunchtime financial learning sessions for employees. In these sessions, experts from partnering banks and institutions offered short, targeted courses focused on a range of practical financial topics, from retirement planning to property investment. This ensured that learning became a lifelong pursuit, accessible within the daily flow of professional life. Fast forward to today, and the results of this comprehensive approach are clear. Singaporeans, on average, display a high level of financial literacy, a fact corroborated by a 2023 study on the importance of financial literacy, evidence from Singapore, published in the Journal of Financial Literacy and Well-Being. A culture of savings, prudent investment, and financial planning is now deeply embedded in the society. While it is true that Singapore's geographic size makes nationwide initiatives more manageable, the core principles of their success, public-private collaboration, the blending of formal education with engaging community initiatives, and a keen understanding of the target audience can be replicated on a larger scale. Their commitment to meeting people where they are made all the difference. Such examples should motivate us. If a small nation-state can achieve such significant strides in less than 2 decades, we must imagine the possibilities within our diverse and resource-rich country. The blueprint is there, and it is up to us to customize it to our unique needs and challenges. You might be thinking, John, what does Singapore, a tiny island nation, have to do with the massive complexities of the U.S. financial system? Well, hold on to your hats, because this story is one for the books. Back in the early 2000s, Singapore saw the horizon, a future where their people needed to be savvy with their finances, and faced a dilemma. The government knew they could not solve this problem alone. The magic happened when they decided not to go it solo, but instead joined hands with private banks, insurance bigwigs, and schools to birth the Money Sense initiative. And no, it was not just about making sense, but about making sense of money. Imagine the power of that alignment. Schools, backed by big banks, teaching kids not just math or history, but how to manage their money, understand the power of investments, and know their rights as consumers. This was financial wisdom weaved into daily lessons. But they didn't stop there. They took to the streets, quite literally. Community centers buzzed with roadshows and events, turning financial learning into a community festival. Young people played online games crafted by tech giants, where saving coins in a virtual world translated to understanding value in the real one. And here is the cherry on top. Corporations, from tech firms to food chains, hosted those lunchtime money sessions where employees, while munching on their sandwiches, received a dose of financial advice and planning. Today, when you walk down the streets of Singapore, you see a society armed with financial wisdom. It is not just about the money, it is about the culture of making informed choices. Now, America is no Singapore. We are vast, diverse, and complex, but stories like these show us the roadmap. If they can do it, so can we. It is about taking the initiative, fostering partnerships, and infusing financial wisdom at every level. By adopting this spirit of collaboration, we can move beyond fragmented efforts and build a cohesive national strategy that empowers every citizen to master the language of money. Chapter 14. Educating our entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is far more than the act of starting a business. It is about embracing a specific mindset, one that is filled with resilience, innovation, and a relentless pursuit to turn visions into realities. Throughout history, this entrepreneurial spirit has served as the primary driver of societal progression and innovation, pushing communities forward through the sheer will to create something new. From the time I began my journey with Operation Hope, I have been acutely aware of the transformative power of this mindset. I have met countless individuals possessing burning ideas, immense talent, and an indomitable spirit, yet many of these brilliant minds face roadblocks, often systemic, sometimes circumstantial, that limit their potential. In the past, for marginalized communities, and especially for the Black community in America, these barriers have often proven insurmountable. But the reality is that they do not have to stay that way. The hurdles are distinct and pervasive, ranging from restricted access to capital and biases in lending to a severe lack of financial education, business mentorship, and resources. Black and brown entrepreneurs often find themselves navigating a maze of challenges that stifles their ability to grow. We can bridge this gap, however, by creating accessible funding for budding entrepreneurs, developing mentorship programs to help light the way, and providing rigorous training and skill development classes. In the world of entrepreneurship, funding is the fuel that turns ideas into reality. Without it, even the most brilliant concepts remain just that, concepts. For far too long, communities of color, particularly the Black community, have been deprived of this vital fuel. Creating accessible funding is about much more than just providing capital. It is about establishing trust, belief, and validation. It is about telling every would-be entrepreneur that their ideas matter, that their dreams are valid, and that society believes in their potential to succeed. Access to capital is more than just about money. It provides individuals the opportunity to dream, to innovate, and to create. But most importantly, it offers the agency required to build a future defined not by what one lacks, but by what one can build. Access to capital provides individuals the opportunity to dream, to innovate, and to create. But most importantly, it recognizes and validates the entrepreneurial spirit that exists in previously overlooked communities. This absence of access is not just a mere oversight. It is a systemic shortcoming that has stifled dreams and aspirations for generations. To rectify this, we must look towards specific, actionable solutions, starting with microfinancing. Traditional banking institutions often see small businesses and startups as risky investments, making it difficult for aspiring entrepreneurs to secure loans. Microfinancing can help fill this gap. Originating in Bangladesh with the founding of the Grameen Bank by Nobel Peace Prize winner Muhammad Yunus, microfinance offers small loans to entrepreneurs who would otherwise be deemed uncreditworthy by traditional banking standards. By offering these small, low-interest loans, we can provide a lifeline to those who need it most. Furthermore, history has shown us that microloan repayment rates are often higher than traditional loans, dispelling the myth of risk associated with lending to low-income individuals. We must also pursue targeted investing in minority-owned businesses. By investing specifically in these enterprises, we can stimulate economic growth in underserved communities. Not only can this create jobs and boost local economies, but it can also help rectify historical financial inequities. Alongside this, community-based funding platforms offer a promising avenue. These platforms function on the principle of community lending, or peer-to-peer lending. By setting up local investment pools, we can encourage community members with a bit of extra money to invest in local businesses. This not only provides necessary funds, but keeps the money within the community, further bolstering local economic development. Think of it as a communal piggy bank, where individuals can borrow funds to start their businesses, and once they are successful, they replenish the pot, allowing others to do the same. This model makes capital more accessible and instills a sense of shared responsibility and mutual growth within the community. Beyond the mechanics of funding, we must focus on inspiring the next generation. Representation matters because it influences our perception of what is possible. When young people in marginalized communities see successful entrepreneurs who look like them, the path to success shifts from a theoretical possibility to a visible reality. When young people in marginalized communities see successful individuals who look like them in finance and business, it opens their minds to new possibilities and breaks down the psychological barriers that limit their aspirations. The current lack of minority representation in these fields is not just detrimental on an individual level, it is harmful to the broader economy as diversity fuels innovation. When specific voices are missing, we miss out on potential solutions. Role models serve as living proof that it is possible to overcome adversity, but mentors occupy a special category. They provide direct guidance, wisdom, and support, helping budding entrepreneurs navigate the tumultuous waters of the business world. Within marginalized communities, the lack of mentorship often stems from the absence of accessible role models, leading to the false belief that these dreams are out of reach. By introducing mentorship programs, we can challenge this narrative and inspire a new generation of entrepreneurs. Role models and mentors can be anyone from successful business owners to educators, but for me, they represented the bridge to a world I could not access on my own. I did not have an inheritance or generational wealth to lean on, nor did I benefit from well-connected parents who could arrange internships in high-rise office complexes. Lacking the resources, assets, or outlets available to a young man with big aspirations, I realized I had to find the business plan for success myself. I had to leverage the one form of capital I could access, something I now call relationship capital. My first mentors were simply people smarter and more connected than I was, starting with my parents. My father, Johnny Will Smith, a small business owner who modeled hard work, and my mother, Ms. Juanita Smith, who taught me the transformative power of unconditional love and self-esteem. As my world expanded, so did my Open University of mentors. There was the white banker who visited my fourth-grade classroom and sparked my first business, the neighborhood candy house. Later, I encountered Dave O'Mara, who owned the Malibu Cinema. I was working an evening shift at a local mini-mart, and I made sure he would never forget me. We would talk about life and business, and eventually, he asked how he could help with my dreams. That relationship led to him backing several of my mini-business ideas. While those specific ventures didn't work out, his belief in me did. Crucially, Dave introduced me to Stephen Cotter Miller, an investment banker. I knew nothing about banking, but because I owed Dave money and needed a job to pay him back, I stepped into that world. Without that accidental introduction born of a mentorship connection, I likely never would have founded Operation Hope or engaged in a career rooted in finance. My education continued through interaction with vastly different figures, each delivering a different future asset value to my evolution. Quincy Jones, the famed music producer, taught me that the secret to his smarts was being nosy as hell, a trait we shared. Mentor Tony Ressler taught me the vital lesson that while you make money during the day, you build wealth in your sleep through compounding. On the spiritual and character side, I learned from Dr. Cecil Chip Murray and Bishop Charles E. Blake, prominent leaders in South Los Angeles. They taught me how to be an honest brother and protected me from unscrupulous actors who viewed my progress as a threat, ensuring my dreams were given free rein. The practical power of relationship capital was proven by William Hanna, the CEO of Cedars Bank, our first banker for Operation Hope. During a government shutdown, we tapped our original $25,000 credit line and desperately needed $75,000 more. The organization's balance sheet could not justify it, but Hanna extended the credit based solely on my word and the personal relationship we had built. That is the power of small community banking and mentorship in action. This posse of believers, ranging from civil rights icons like Dr. Dorothy Once, Height and Reverend C.T. Vivian to bank CEOs and executives, listened to me, mentored me, and believed in me. Now I try to pay it forward to a new generation, understanding that mentorship programs have the power to stabilize entire communities. Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point cites a University of Illinois study showing that a community stabilizes with just 5% positive role models. It wasn't 50% or even the 20% support Dr. Ray King enjoyed at the height of his movement. The magic number was simply 5%. This is mind-blowingly powerful and achievable. To reach this, we must ensure mentors are representative of the communities they serve, fostering long-lasting, meaningful connections rather than one-off interactions. By making these programs accessible through community centers and online platforms, we can democratize entrepreneurship, making it a viable path to financial independence for all. Chapter 15: Educating Our Workforce. Not everyone has the desire to be an entrepreneur. Picture walking into the human resources office of a new job. There on the table lies your employment package, containing the usual suspects like health insurance, dental coverage, and vacation time. But nestled among these typical offerings is something unexpected: financial well-being benefits. In this scenario, the employer demonstrates an interest not just in your physical health, but in your financial health as well. While this notion might seem a bit far-fetched to some, it shouldn't be. After all, financial well-being is a critical aspect of a person's overall health, and financial stress is a significant contributor to mental health problems. There is no logical reason why financial well-being resources should not be as commonplace as healthcare resources in an employment benefits package. Imagine having access to a financial counselor as part of your standard employment benefits, a personal guide to help navigate everything from understanding taxes to making savvy investment decisions. But the vision goes further. Imagine if your employer also offered financial literacy workshops and regular sessions where everyone, from interns to executives, could come together to learn about the intricacies of personal finance. These sessions could cover the spectrum of financial life, from retirement planning and understanding loans and mortgages to effective budgeting and much more. Companies could take this a step further by creating incentives to utilize these benefits, such as matching contributions for retirement savings, reward systems for employees who complete financial education programs, and, crucially, providing paid time off to attend these sessions. By establishing platforms where employees can share success stories and feedback loops to ensure the learning environment remains responsive, the workplace becomes a hub of dynamic growth. In this model, everybody would win. Employees who are financially secure and not distracted by the stress of living paycheck to paycheck are likely to be more focused, more productive, and more committed to their work because they understand how to use their paycheck to secure their future. Simultaneously, companies that show genuine care for their employees' well-being, including their financial health, build a reputation as an employer of choice, attracting top talent in a competitive market. Some forward-thinking companies are already leading this charge, recognizing the profound impact financial literacy has on their employees' lives. PwC, for example, offers programs to help employees pay off student loans. And Delta Airlines has implemented a highly successful financial wellness program in partnership with Operation Hope and Fidelity. By reshaping their approach to employment benefits, these companies are not just investing in their employees' futures. They are investing in the financial future of the nation, creating a culture of literacy that extends well beyond the walls of the workplace to create better consumers, investors, and informed citizens. Imagine if your workplace was not just a site of labor, but a hub of financial learning and empowerment, a place where you had access to certified financial coaches, interactive financial education modules, and credit and money management workshops, all during your regular working hours. Consider how it would feel to no longer have to navigate the confusing landscape of personal finance alone, but instead to have experienced professionals and comprehensive resources right at your fingertips, empowering you to make informed decisions about your financial health. This is not a hypothetical scenario. Such a program already exists and is working its way into major employers across the United States. Operation Hope's Hope Inside the Workplace program was developed to bring financial empowerment and education directly to employees within their working environment. It challenges the traditional boundaries of employee benefits by integrating financial coaching into the very fabric of the workplace, paving the way for a future where financial well-being is not just an aspiration, but an integral part of the work experience. A profound example of this model in action is found in the Delta difference. Delta Airlines is more than just a carrier. It is home to more than 90,000 employees, many of whose lives have been defined by the struggle of living from paycheck to paycheck. I first approached Delta around 2018, suggesting that they pilot our Hope Inside the Workplace model. Although the CEO, Ed Bastian, and I were and remain good friends, I did not want to tread on our friendship, so I went directly to their Global Human Resources Officer, Joanne Smith. Initially, Joanne viewed the proposal through a different lens, perhaps not seeing the immediate need I saw. However, we must get comfortable with people seeing the world differently, so I asked her for the next best thing: authorization to set up Operation Hope somewhere within Delta to see what would happen. She graciously agreed to a pilot. It took 2 years and a global crisis to bring the true value of financial literacy education into clear focus. Sometime in early 2020, at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, and unbeknownst to me, nervous workforce-level employees at Delta were heading to their respective 401k plan portals and requesting emergency withdrawals in overnight transactions. Quietly, without fanfare, protests, or drama of any kind, more than $1 billion was withdrawn in emergency requests from Delta employees' retirement accounts. This number still shocks me. These were uncoordinated acts of desperation, folks sitting at their home computers in the middle of the night, forced by circumstance to hit the Withdraw Now button. To her credit, Joanne Smith called me immediately, making it clear that the company now recognized the critical need for the financial wellness support we offered. Within 30 days, the company committed to spreading our Hope inside offices and financial coaches nationwide throughout their system. As we began to make a difference, we held a town hall session for all Delta employees, featuring myself, Ed Bastian, and our friend Bill Rogers, the CEO of Truist. During the session, Bill shared how he had discovered a significant financial fragility among his own bank employees, most of whom lacked even a few $100s for an emergency. To support them, Truist decided to provide up to $750 to each employee who completed financial wellness coaching. Ed Bastian, an outstanding leader quick to identify best-in-class practices, took this idea a step further. Not long after, Delta announced that it would provide a $1,000 emergency savings account contribution to each and every employee who went through our financial wellness coaching program, utilizing either Operation Hope or Fidelity. Ed, Joanne, and the team announced this enhanced program in January 2023 at an all-hands employee leadership session at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. A team led by Kelly Elliott took the vision and drove it to the grassroots level within the organization, touching everyone where they worked, online, in person, and even out on the tarmac if necessary. I believe that all we needed were a couple of initial success stories, and the momentum would take care of itself. The company estimated that success would look like 20% of their employees signing up by the end of the year. Instead, they met that original goal within a single month. As of the time of this writing, almost half of all Delta employees have finished the program and established an emergency savings account that serves as a safety net. The results have been nothing short of transformative. Since January 2023, 31,000 employees, almost 30% of the workforce, enrolled in the program. Of those, 21,500 have already completed at least one financial learning track and a coaching session, earning them the $1,000 contribution from Delta to fund their rainy day accounts. Remarkably, participants have contributed an average of $1,061 of their own money to date, well above the required contribution. The psychological impact has been equally profound, with participants reporting a 62% increase in their sense of financial control and a 139% increase in feeling able to save for other goals. Today, the company views this financial well-being work as one of two bookends of employee engagement support, operating within what I call a stakeholder capitalism model. The first bookend is financial wellness. The second is shared success. On February 14, 2024, Ed Bastian announced more than $1.5 billion in employee profit-sharing bonuses. The logic is simple. When the company does well, so do the employees. Conversely, when the company experienced challenges during COVID, the employees rallied in support of the leadership. Delta did not have to lay off a single employee during the pandemic. Instead, they took volunteer furloughs and returned when the world reopened in 2022. It is no accident that Delta is now the most profitable airline in the world, the most successful by market share, and the most valuable by market capitalization. Success is intentional, and Delta smartly realized that their people are just as important as their planes and on-time schedules. Chapter 16, Elevating Fighting Needless Economic Wars and Forgetting the Shared Dream that Unites Us All. Our salvation lies in uniting around a renewed vision for America, a vision driven by data and bound by the aspiration for financial dignity for every citizen. Much like any thriving entity, our nation needs a well-structured business plan, not one rooted solely in rhetoric and lofty ideals, but one grounded in clear metrics, tangible goals, and outcomes. I believe that central to this new business plan for America is the Hope Financial Wellness Index. Created by my team at Operation Hope and powered by Experian, the Hope Financial Wellness Index provides a snapshot of a community's financial health as measured by the average credit scores of its residents. At first glance, it is merely a tool, an index. But look closer, and it becomes a mirror reflecting the financial health and well-being of our neighborhoods. This index does not merely compile numbers. It marries resident credit scores with vital data on education, home ownership, income, life expectancy, and crime. It reveals the soul of our communities, making visible the invisible and unmasking the true financial challenges and potential of neighborhoods across the United States. Credit scores are not just signals of an individual's creditworthiness, they are an exceedingly precise barometer for the strength and resilience of entire communities. Raise a neighborhood's average credit score by just 100 points, and you will witness a profound transformation, a decline in crime, the blossoming of families, and an overall uplifting in community wellness. The data paints a stark picture of two Americas, the 580 credit score community and the 700 credit score community. In the former, Individuals live to around 61 years of age, meaning they often die before they can even collect Social Security at age 65. Just a mere 15 minutes away, in 700 credit score communities, people are living to 81 years or older. A 120-point difference in credit score essentially equates to more than 15 extra years of life. The disparities continue across every metric of well-being. In the 580 credit score community, most people have a high school degree, whereas the 700 community is defined by college education. The 580 community sees a proliferation of single-parent households, irrespective of race, while the 700 community is overwhelmingly comprised of two-parent households. Home ownership, the easiest way to build wealth in America regardless of the hype suggesting otherwise, sits between 25% and 45% in the lower score neighborhoods, compared to more than 75% in the higher score areas. Unsurprisingly, the 580 community is where crime, drugs, and depression are centered, attracting the lowest-rated fast food restaurants and suffering a violent crime rate of 75 per 1,000 residents. In contrast, the 700 community sees a violent crime rate of just 2 per 1,000. Nothing changes your life more, other than God or love, than moving your credit score 120 points. We have mapped every zip code in America by credit score. And now we are working with leading financial institutions to harness this data and translate it into tangible change. We are merging data-driven strategies with grassroots education initiatives to transform low credit score neighborhoods into beacons of financial well-being. Where once stood check cashers and payday lenders, we envision community-centric businesses, banks, and retail outlets that fortify the economic spine of neighborhoods. We are building a radical movement of common sense at scale, proving that we can move credit scores up 54 points in 6 months, move debt down $3,800, and help people increase their savings by $100 on average. We are making people who earn $50,000 a year bankable, transforming them into valuable investments in the eyes of financial institutions. Consider why a bank would say no to a loan for a person earning $50,000 a year. While racism or bias may occasionally play a role, it is often simply that the person's credit score indicates a financial risk far from bank quality. By raising the credit scores of communities, we help banks get out of the no business of declining loans and back into the yes business of investing in individuals and businesses. Approximately half of Black America has a credit score below 640, a statistic that includes college-educated folks and those who appear outwardly successful. While we often focus on police abuse or retail racism, the truth is that waking up locked out of the free enterprise system might be worse. You cannot get an auto loan with good rates under 640, a prime mortgage under 680, or a small business loan under 700. If we can educate people on how to raise their scores, we can stabilize America. This stabilization brings with it optimism, belief, well-being, confidence, and a sense of renewal, a plan for the future that lifts all boats. Section 4. It's a movement, not a moment. Empowerment. Through education is more than a push for policy changes or curriculum overhauls. It is a cry for a cultural shift, a fundamental change in the way we view and value financial education. Our message is a call to action for all Americans to join us in the fight for financial literacy, to share in our vision of a nation empowered, enlightened, and engaged in its financial future. This is not a fleeting moment in time, but a sustained movement toward a society where financial dignity is accessible to all. Chapter 17. Empowerment through Education. If this book has illuminated anything, it is that financial literacy, while policy is essential, it is insufficient without a corresponding shift in public consciousness. We need to inspire individuals to embrace financial literacy for themselves and to recognize the immense value that a financially educated population brings to their own lives. We have to get them excited about being part of something bigger, something life-changing, and ultimately, something nation-building. Every major societal shift in history has started with a handful of aware, driven individuals who dared to instigate change. We already have more than a handful. Now, it is time to get the rest of the nation in on the movement. A movement begins with a whisper of discontent, a rumbling of unrest, and a spark of desire for something more. Eventually, this discontent, unrest, and desire coalesce into a unified message. Messages are the heart of any movement. They carry the dreams, the desires, the goals, and the aspirations of a collective seeking change. They serve as the rallying cry, the banner that unites folks from different walks of life under a common cause. It is the hook, the headline, the tweet, and the soundbite that draws attention, piques interest, and fuels the fire of collective action. For our financial literacy movement, the message is simple, yet profound. Empowerment through education. This slogan highlights the direct and unbreakable connection between financial literacy and individual prosperity, community development, and national growth. To make this message resonate, it needs to be omnipresent, embedded in the very fabric of our daily lives. It needs to echo in our classrooms, permeate our homes and communities, and reverberate through our workplaces. It needs to be a natural topic of discussion at the dinner table, the barbershop, the water cooler, and the playground, becoming a staple of our social media feeds and a common thread that ties us all together, regardless of socioeconomic status, race, or credit score. However, achieving this ubiquity requires a fundamental shift in how we talk about money, because messaging about financial literacy typically comes from the top down. The content and methods of delivery are usually decided by those in the upper echelons of institutions that play a significant role in our financial systems: banks, credit unions, investment firms, government bodies, and localized nonprofits. While each of these entities has mounted campaigns with good intent, there has been a disconnect that renders them ineffective. The core issue is that these messages are often crafted in corporate boardrooms, government offices, and well-funded nonprofits by individuals who do not share the same lived experiences as those at the receiving end of the communication. As a result, they miss an essential element: alignment with the people who need this information the most. Too often, the messaging around financial literacy is sterile, complicated, and detached from the realities of everyday life, designed to fit the molds of regulatory compliance or corporate responsibility rather than the nuanced needs of various communities. When we talk about financial literacy, we shouldn't just be discussing interest rates or retirement savings in the abstract. We should be talking about managing day-to-day finances, navigating unexpected expenses, or working multiple jobs while trying to save for the future. We need to address the reality of single parents trying to put food on the table, students saddled with college loans, families trapped in cycles of debt, and individuals trying to rebuild their lives after financial missteps. For financial literacy messages to truly resonate, they must be culturally competent, tailored to the needs of individuals, and delivered in a language they understand. We need to meet people where they are, not where we think they should be, which means going beyond traditional mediums of delivery and embracing the platforms where our target audience spends their time. We are not just delivering information. We are fostering a movement that encourages individuals to take control of their financial destinies. Consequently, the messaging should not come as a directive, but as a dialogue, where we listen, understand, and respond to questions and concerns. We need to make financial literacy relatable, engaging, and empowering. I admit that financial literacy does not sound as thrilling as the latest sports car or the newest tech gadget, yet the benefits it yields are far more enduring and impactful. To bridge this gap, we have to package the concept correctly. Consider the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge that went viral a few years ago. It started as a simple fundraising initiative for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis research and turned into a global phenomenon, raising more than $115 million, largely because of its engaging, interactive nature and the enthusiastic endorsement of celebrity figures. Imagine if we could generate the same level of enthusiasm for financial literacy, turning learning about interest rates, budgeting, and credit scores into something as viral and culturally potent. America is the world capital of branding, with a knack for storytelling that makes us connect with products and buy into corporate visions. If we can make a simple product feel important and desirable, we should not limit that power to commerce, We should leverage it for a cause as vital as building our nation's financial health. We have the capacity to create advertisements that make understanding compound interest as enticing as the latest smartphone, or to hire social media influencers to promote the value of budgeting and saving as passionately as they do a new fashion line. We can even call on our leading-edge tech industry to develop popular video games that subtly educate players about financial management. By aligning financial literacy with elements of pop culture and market trends, we can break down the barriers of complexity and tedium often associated with the subject. We could even engage brands themselves in the movement. Imagine a bank offering special account perks to customers who complete a financial literacy course, or a retail mega brand like Target or Walmart offering discounts to customers who demonstrate savvy budgeting practices. By standing on the shoulders of America's mega brands, we can strip away the intimidation of finance and finally make financial literacy cool, transforming it from a chore into a celebrated cultural value. Chapter 18. Join the movement. We have by no means exhausted the topic, but we have traveled a significant distance together, dissecting the problem of financial illiteracy and laying out a comprehensive solution. We have established that fixing this issue requires a multi-pronged approach, one that necessitates educational policy change, deep community engagement, strategic partnerships with U.S. workplaces and financial institutions, and a massive surge in public awareness. However, strategies and policies are merely frameworks. They require human energy to come alive. We need you. Empowerment through education is more than a philosophy. It is a direct call to action, and a plea for every person, organization, and institution to play their specific part in creating a financially literate society. The responsibility begins in the home, the primary classroom for life's most enduring lessons. If you are a parent, the charge is to start teaching your children about money immediately. Open a savings account for them, not just as a financial transaction, but as a pedagogical tool to discuss how the value of money can change lives. Teach them the mechanics of budgeting and the critical importance of saving and investing, ensuring they enter adulthood with a map rather than a blindfold. This responsibility extends into the professional sphere as well. If you are an employer, you must consider offering financial well-being programs to your employees, fostering an environment that encourages financial health with the same rigor and care typically reserved for physical health. Beyond the individual and the workplace, the call expands to the structural pillars of our society. If you are part of a community organization, you must consider how to incorporate financial literacy into your existing programs. Perhaps by engaging with organizations like Operation Hope to bring education to the people who need it most. If you are a policymaker or involved in government, use your platform to advocate for policies that promote financial education, working tirelessly to embed these lessons in schools and create partnerships that deliver resources to the underserved. Finally, if you represent a financial institution, it is time to rethink who you are serving and how your messages are being delivered. By partnering with nonprofits, governments, and community organizations, you can help bring financial literacy to the forefront, ensuring that the path to financial dignity is open to all. This collective effort is the only way to transform the theoretical promise of the American dream into a tangible reality for every citizen. By moving from passive observation to active participation, whether as a parent, an employer, a community leader, or a banker, we cease to be spectators in a failing economy and become architects of a more equitable future. The movement for financial literacy is not a solitary endeavor, but a shared responsibility. And it is only through our combined actions that we can finally build a nation where economic opportunity is a universal right rather than a privilege.